On the celestial continent, in the howling forbidden land, atop a cliff, stood the ancient demon Chu, surrounded by numerous enemies. A strong bald man shouted, declaring that even though the demon Chu had spent his life killing people and committing evil deeds, today would be the day of his death. A woman was furious with the demon Chu because he had killed her sister. Everyone there was seeking revenge, as Chu was the greatest villain. Suddenly someone called out to him, and when he turned, he saw a woman flying on her sword. She asked if he was regretful now that everyone was against him. This woman was named Mengdi. She was the master of the rising sky peak of the Taisu Holy Land. Chu began to laugh and asked if she really thought he was remorseful, as he had spent his entire life cultivating and fighting, and among those in the same domain, Chu was still superior. He said that the only thing he regretted was how merciless time was, and that if he had another 1,000 years, no one would dare to go against him. This angered Mengdi, and she said that since Chu had no regrets, he could not blame her for being ruthless. She then began to use her sword technique. She called everyone else who wanted revenge against Chu and ordered them all to attack Chu together to kill him. Chu began forming several seals with his left hand. When Chu finished making the seals, he smiled. The people seeking revenge against Chu said that Chu was plotting something and that they couldn't let him succeed. They used the heavenly Dharma, surrounded Chu, and struck at him. Using the 3,000 Worlds ability, Chu took the blow head-on. All wounded, Chu started laughing, and with a sinister expression, said that the emperor lamented not becoming immortal and achieving longevity. But he, Chu, would never lament anything. Chu stabbed his sword into the ground, and suddenly, a massive explosion of energy occurred, destroying everything around him. But in the end, Chu died. The people who wanted revenge against Chu wondered if he had sacrificed himself. The old man with a beard said it was a pity because if Chu had gone to the Tianyuan Great Wall and killed wild beasts, he would have become a great general of the human race. At the end of the day, after that battle against Chu, people said he had sacrificed himself. It was truly a pity. Chu's consciousness thought, did they really believe that I, known as the demon Chu, would die like this? In the Taisu Holy Land, there are 18 peaks, and the masters of the Prosperous Sky, Rising Sky, and Sword Sky peaks were the strongest in the entire Holy Land, and were located in the Upper Holy Domain. The masters of the remaining peaks were located in the Lower Holy Domain. A month later, at Rising Sky Peak, in the mansion of the peak's heir disciple, Chu smiled and said he was back. Chu said that before he was reborn, he was a university student, and to resurrect, he had already thought of thousands of methods, so his death had been entirely calculated. Chu smiled and thought that his preparation had been meticulous. How could they think he would die so easily? Chu stood up and realized that he was in the Taisu Holy Land and said he was destined to be there. A system screen appeared saying, "User resurrection detected. System function has changed. Please choose one of the new functions below. 1. Destiny villain. As long as you commit evil, you will receive rewards from the system. 2. Well-trained villain. Having died once and knowing all the sufferings, you now choose to hide and cultivate in secret to become strong and then return to commit evil." Chu thought that in his past life, he chose to be the destiny villain and committed countless evil deeds, but admitted it had been a lot of fun. However, after everyone started hunting him, it became a nuisance. But in this reincarnation, he would choose a different path. He would become strong in secret and then destroy the world, aiming to become a sacred disciple. Chu chose the well-trained villain function. New function selected. Loading. New function loading complete. Chu tells the system to open the status panel and thinks about what his body would be like in this life. The system opens the status window. User. Chishu. Identity. Heir disciple of Rising Sky Peak. Domain. None. Destroyed. Qualifications. 17. Normal. Cultivation method. Because the user's soul is very strong and took over this body, the strength and methods were erased. Luck value. Less than 18. Bad luck. Cultivation points. 0. Combat power. Slightly stronger than a chicken. Chu wonders if he was really the heir disciple of Rising Sky Peak, and comments that his qualifications were normal, his luck was bad, and his strength was only slightly stronger than a chicken's. Incredulous, Chu asks what the previous owner of that body did to be in such a condition. 10 days ago, the previous owner of that body, the heir disciple of Rising Sky Peak, and the heir disciple of Sword Peak, had a life-or-death battle in the arena out of jealousy over a woman. In the arena, the heir disciple of Rising Sky Peak was defeated with a single blow and had his cultivation destroyed, suffering unimaginable humiliation. After discovering what had happened, Chu comments that the former owner of the body was utterly ridiculous, getting beaten up like a side character because of jealousy. But now that the body was his, the former owner's enemies were also his enemies, and he would avenge him. Chu declares that they should wait, for he would cultivate until that body became invincible. An hour later, Chu thinks that the body was very useless, as it had a serious injury and no cultivation. However, Chu smiles and says that it didn't matter, for luckily, he had other methods. At Rising Sky Peak, a group of people was talking about how the Peak Master, who had killed the demon Chu, had returned 3 days ago. One of them asks if the demon Chu was really dead. Another responds that the demon Chu was invincible against those in the same domain, but compared to the other 10 supreme saints, he was a domain below, so he couldn't win. Another cultivator comments that he hoped they would kill all the people of that kind. Chu, hearing this behind a tree, became irritated and thought that those insignificant nobodies had no idea that not only was he not dead, but he had also become a disciple of the Holy Land, and if he couldn't go against them, then he would join them. Things were going to get very interesting there. Chu approaches them and coughs to get their attention. The cultivators notice Chu there and greet him, asking if he had recovered from his injuries. Chu replies that it wasn't that serious and walks away. The blue-clad cultivator comments that Chu had the same name as the old demon Chu. The black-clad cultivator asks if Chu had any relation to the old demon Chu, but no one knew. The red-clad cultivator responds that they were overthinking, because if that were the case, he should have at least half of the old demon Chu's cultivation talent. But his cultivation had been destroyed by someone else in a petty fight over a woman. Chu climbs the stairs until he reaches Chi Mengdi's mansion. Upon reaching the door, he calls for his master, saying that her disciple has something to discuss. The protagonist enters and goes to his master. Mengdi comments that 10 days had passed since he fought and was injured, but only now did he come to see her. Did he need his master's help to continue on the path of cultivation? Chu kneels and pleads, "Master, please." Mengdi responds that Chu's cultivation was low, yet he still dared to fight stronger disciples over a woman. He deserved to have his cultivation destroyed, so she could not help him and asked him to leave. Chu replies that his cultivation was low, and she didn't know the reason for that. How could he become strong without cultivation resources if all the resources were given to the second junior brother, third junior sister, fourth junior brother, and fifth junior sister? How could he become strong if he received nothing? Mengdi slaps her hand and says that he was very audacious because he had always been a fool who never put effort into cultivating, but now he was claiming that his master was unfair for not giving him anything. It was truly ridiculous. The protagonist says that she didn't give him resources because he had the same name as the old demon Chu, which is why she was always disgusted by him. Mengdi replies that she was never disgusted by him, but that it would be better for him to leave and wait because she would find a treasure between heaven and earth that could heal him. She would definitely help him continue on the path of cultivation. Chu, with a cynical smile, says no, as she could help him right there and then. Mengdi asks how she could help him. The protagonist responds that it was said she had the heavenly fragrance body, and approaching her, Chu suggests that if they performed dual cultivation together, not only would he recover, but his cultivation would also greatly increase. Mengdi becomes serious and asks what he was talking about. The protagonist replies that he was suggesting dual cultivation with her and kisses his master's hand, leaving her blushing and flustered. Mengdi, blushing, says he is an unfaithful disciple and asks if he wants to die. How dare he humiliate his master like this? Mengdi becomes angry and with her fingers points her sword at Chu, saying she would ensure that his limbs would be cut off and he would be expelled from the sect. Chu smiles and uses some seals. The master's sword begins to disintegrate and she starts to feel weak, her legs giving way. Mengdi asks what is happening as she cannot use her superior saint cultivation and ends up collapsing on the ground. Chu approaches and says he promises to be gentle. Mengdi, blushing, calls him an unfaithful disciple and asks what he thinks he is doing to his master. The protagonist tells her to relax because he is helping his disciple learn and follow the correct path of the Tao. The cultivation domains are Foundation Establishment Domain, Spiritual Sea Domain, Spiritual Pillar Domain, Spiritual Domain, Spiritual Tao Domain, Divine Domain, Lower Saint Domain, Upper Saint Domain, Saint King Domain, Emperor Domain, and Great Emperor Domain. Below the Emperor Domain, each domain is divided into layers. The first to third layers are called the lower layer, the fourth to sixth layers are called the intermediate layer, and the seventh to ninth layers are called the upper layer. Mengdi calls him an unfaithful disciple and asks what he did to her. She wonders why she can't use her powers. It feels as if she is an ordinary person. The protagonist, in his thoughts, says it's obvious that he sealed his master's cultivation because on the day the superior saints were hunting him, before dying, he placed the celestial reincarnation seal on his body. It was an artifact he had received from the system for doing evil deeds. The artifact, called the Celestial Reincarnation Seal, is a divine class sealing artifact. It allows placing a servant seal on a cultivator's body, and by activating it with a few words, it is possible to seal all of the target's cultivation. The artifact has 2 uses, and it is necessary to combine 2 seals for it to be effective. The protagonist thinks that now, upon realizing this, any female cultivator below the Great Emperor Domain would have no choice but to obey everything he commands. Chu says that despite her age, Mengdi is still very beautiful and desirable. Mengdi, embarrassed, calls him unfaithful and asks how he dares to say such things to his master, and if he isn't afraid she might kill him. The protagonist laughs and tells her to try killing him instead of just talking. Mengdi, embarrassed, turns her face away. Chu comments that if Master Liu Shui of Sharp Sky Peak knew her cultivation was sealed, what would she do? Because as far as he knew, the master had killed Mengdi's father, and with such a good opportunity, she wouldn't miss the chance to avenge her father's death. Mengdi, shocked, thinks she can't let Liu Shui find out, as that woman is crazy and would definitely kill her. The master calls the protagonist an unfaithful disciple and says that the artifacts of heaven and earth and cultivation resources, she would hand over everything, and he could choose whatever he wanted. Chu grabs Mengdi and says he doesn't just want that. What he wants is her. Mengdi, embarrassed, responds that it is impossible, absolutely impossible, saying, "Don't even think about it. I am a master in the superior saint domain, and I will not be abused by you." The protagonist thought that he had no grudge against the Taisu Holy Land, but he wondered why Mengdi had joined forces with the group that was hunting him and asked if she was afraid. He mentioned that he had an ancient secret cultivation art that could be beneficial for both of them, and told her to take a look. Mengdi wondered where this unfaithful disciple had obtained such a miraculous secret art. That secret art was connected to the heavenly Tao and was something incredible and absolute. The protagonist asked her what she thought, but the master responded by telling him to leave. Chu approached Mengdi and asked her to accept this disciple, but the master said he was very unfaithful. A system screen appeared, stating that the user had become an unfaithful disciple, which was a big problem. As expected of a great villain, he obtained 1,000 cultivation points. The system informed that the user and Chimengdi were performing dual cultivation, which completely healed the user's injuries and increased his cultivation qualifications. The user's qualifications increased to 317 celestial, and with that, his cultivation speed was increased 20-fold. The user's cultivation was enhanced, advancing through the first, second, third, and even the 8th layer of the foundation establishment domain. A few hours later, Chu and Mengdi finished their dual cultivation, and a new system screen appeared, stating that the user's cultivation had advanced to the 9th layer of the foundation establishment domain. The protagonist then turned, thanked his master, and said they would see each other on other days, telling her to rest well. Mengdi told Chu that he had already taken advantage of her and gotten everything he wanted, so he could remove the seal he used to seal her cultivation. Chu turned to the master and said that, of course, he couldn't. The master asked if he wanted his master to die. The protagonist replied that if she didn't want others to know that her cultivation was sealed, then she had better be obedient. Chu took a crystal in his hand and asked if she knew the function of the image crystal in his hand, and started to laugh. Mengdi, deeply embarrassed, asked if he had recorded everything. The protagonist told her not to be angry, as he just wanted to remember her shaking her little butt and moaning loudly. As he left, Chu said that because of their relationship as disciple and master, he would give her a warning, not to even try to remove the seal because, across the entire celestial continent, only he knew how to remove the seal, unless she knew a great emperor. But she knew there was no great emperor in that world, and if that disciple died, she would have to live her entire life as a common person and die of old age. And if she didn't believe him, she could try. Moreover, if he died, everything recorded on that crystal would spread everywhere. How would the people of the continent react to watching a respected master doing such things with her disciple? Mengdi, outraged, said that he was an unfaithful disciple and would have a horrible death. She screamed that he was very evil and wondered how an insect, not even in the spiritual Tao domain, could have the power to seal her cultivation. At night, Chu commented that now that he had noticed, he had spent a long time with the master because the moon was already shining in the sky. With the help of his master, he had managed to advance to the new layer of the foundation establishment domain, but he had to wait for his master to rest to perform dual cultivation again and break through to the spiritual sea domain. The protagonist began to think that the spiritual sea domain was like a wooden barrel to store water. So the foundation establishment domain is the process of creating the barrel. The more stable the foundation, the larger and more resistant the water barrel would be, and naturally he would have a good foundation to tread the path of cultivation. The failure in his previous life was due to advancing too quickly through the cultivation domains, and because of that, he never took the time to stabilize his foundation. But now, he would have a solid and supreme foundation. Now, even if he faced a cultivator in a domain above his own, he could still kill them. The protagonist wondered if the cultivation resources he had gathered in his previous life were still in that hidden ravine, but even if they were, how could he leave the Taisu Holy Land? Chu saw the pavilion of flying boats and thought that taking a flying boat would be a good opportunity. The protagonist took a flying boat and headed towards the hidden ravine. Upon arriving near the ravine, he entered a cave. Chu approached a dry tree and thought that the cultivation resources he had stored in his past life were hidden around there. He disembarked from the boat and walked towards the dry tree. Chu bit his finger and began to write a seal on the stone near the dry tree. Suddenly, the stone disappeared, revealing a large chest with several pouches around it. The protagonist remarked that the resources he had stored were still there and hoped that with them, he could become stronger and regain his former glory. Suddenly, someone called the protagonist Trash Chu and said they never thought they would meet again. Out of nowhere, a flying boat with several cultivators appeared above Chu. One of the cultivators commented that, to his surprise, it was just Trash Chu. mentioning that he thought Chu was already dead, as he never imagined that Chu would recover and start walking around after just 10 days. This cultivator was Jiang Meng, the heir disciple of Sword Sky Peak. He remarked that the master of Rising Sky Peak took very good care of her disciple, to the point of using an artifact between heaven and earth capable of restoring his cultivation. Chu reflected that it had only been 10 days since Jiang Meng had destroyed the cultivation of the body he was using. That insect forced him to start cultivating from scratch and still had the audacity to offend him. Determined, Chu boarded his flying boat and said that later he would make Jiang Meng pay, declaring that in 10 days they would face each other again in a life-or-death battle in the arena. Surprised, Meng asked the other cultivators if he really heard that, and they, laughing, confirmed that Chu said he wanted to fight another life-or-death battle in the arena against Jiang Meng. They found it absurd that trash still dared to challenge Brother Jiang. Jiang, using the 1,000-mile sound transfer technique, began calling Chu trash and stated that on that day, he didn't kill him out of respect for the master of Rising Sky Peak. But now, after being challenged again, they would face each other in the arena in a life-or-death battle, with no remorse for being cruel. The people, shocked, questioned why Chu dared to challenge Jiang Meng again, speculating that he had gone mad. After all, his cultivation in the spiritual sea domain had been destroyed, so how would he face Meng, who was in a higher layer? Everyone predicted that there would be another massacre in 10 days. Chu, in his flying boat, stopped at Chimengdi's mansion. He commented that his master's mansion was full of spiritual power and decided to stay there to cultivate, believing that his master wouldn't mind since everything that was hers was also his. Upon entering Mengdi's mansion, Chu called her beautiful and said he had returned to see her again. Mengdi asked what he was doing there so late, and Chu responded by asking what she meant by that question. When the master asked him not to come closer, Chu, already near her, commented that he knew how to do worse things and asked if she wanted to see. Chu began making several arrangements and activated them, surrounding Mengdi's entire mansion. The master, surprised, asked if he had inherited the ancient Tao of arrangements, to which Chu replied that she had a keen eye and asked if she wanted to learn, questioning what she had to offer in exchange for that knowledge. Mengdi crossed her arms and said she wasn't interested in learning. Chu then declared that if that was the case, he would go into seclusion to cultivate, and if the master felt hungry, he had brought something for her to eat, reminding her that with her cultivation sealed, she was a common human and needed to eat to survive. The master turned her face away, blaming him for everything, and vowing that someday she would kill him. Chu slapped his master on the butt, leaving her completely embarrassed, and said she was behaving very badly. He warns her that he placed some deadly formations at the back of the mansion and doesn't recommend that she go there because he still needs to improve his cultivation qualification, and if she ended up dying, he would be very sad. Blushing, Mengdi says that one day she will cut him into thousands of pieces, calling him a damn unfaithful disciple. At the back of the mansion, Chu examines the information about an item from the system, the Life and Creation Tao Fruit, an extremely precious immortal treasure capable of creating an incredibly solid foundation for cultivators and allowing an ordinary person to directly break through to the spiritual domain, extending their life by 1,000 years. This fruit grew at the bottom of the celestial demon abyss and could only be harvested after 10,000 years. It was so rare that, according to reports, a master of the Holy Land exchanged 3 celestial-class martial arts and 2 immortal-class martial arts for a Life and Creation Tao Fruit to help his beloved disciple establish a solid foundation in cultivation. Chu thinks about using that fruit, which has been considered since ancient times as a treasure between heaven and earth, capable of creating an extremely solid foundation. By doing so, he could use the divine-class Tao scripture. Even though it was thanks to the Life and Creation Tao Fruit in the system, he wondered if there was any cultivator on the celestial continent with a stronger foundation than his. Chu takes the Life and Creation Tao Fruit and begins to eat it. The fruit quickly takes effect, and Chu activates the Tao scripture, starting the process of recreating his foundation. Suddenly, a system window appears, informing him that his cultivation has been reduced to the 8th layer of the foundation establishment domain, then to the 6th, the 3rd, and finally to the mortal domain. Then, a choice option appears in the system. Do you wish to break through to the next domain? Yes or no? Chu promptly selects yes. The system detects that he used the strongest technique for foundation building, the Tao scripture, and warns that the consumption of cultivation points will increase, with the estimated time to advance each layer being 1 month. Another message informs him that 100 cultivation points will be required to advance each month. As time passes, the system tracks Chu's progress. After 1 month, he advances to the 1st layer of the foundation establishment domain. After 2 months, he advances to the 2nd layer. After 3 months, he reaches the 3rd layer, and after 4 months, he attains the 4th layer of the foundation establishment domain. Deeply focused on his cultivation, Chu recalls that everyone believed the 9th layer was the limit, blindly following the path of their ancestors. However, he knew that there existed a 10th layer, accessible only to those who surpassed their limits and discovered the right path. Breaking and rebuilding, between life and death, involved great fear, but also offered great opportunities. 7 days later, Chu finally manages to advance his cultivation, and a new system window appears, informing him that he has advanced to the 10th layer of the Foundation Establishment domain. It took 10 months and 1,000 cultivation points to achieve this feat. With his cultivation points now exhausted, Chu shouts, declaring that he has made significant progress. On a mountain, there was a large hurricane with several lightning bolts. At Sword Sky Peak, a woman was observing the whole situation. In her thoughts, the woman realized that there was a very powerful energy fluctuation and wondered if it was Chimengdi who was advancing. This woman is Liu Shui, the master of Sword Sky Peak. The protagonist thought that the condensation of his flesh and soul had reached its limit, and with his solid foundation, he would break the chains and advance to the spiritual sea domain. Suddenly, a system window appears, informing him that the user is about to break through to the spiritual sea domain, and that with a solid foundation, it will be possible to advance to the 10th layer. Chu comments that he didn't expect to unlock the reward system so easily, and checks the reward he received. The protagonist jumps and punches the air, creating a great pressure in the water, when another system message appears, informing him that he has achieved perfection and that the reward system has been unlocked. The system congratulates the user on receiving the sacred primordial body. Chu is shocked and wonders what this sacred primordial body is. The system informs him that the sacred primordial body requires a large amount of resources to be cultivated. Then the system alerts that the sacred primordial body is now fusing with the user. Frustrated, Chu exclaims, asking what the hell is happening. The system then informs him that the fusion of the sacred primordial body has been successfully completed. Chu laments, saying that he had consumed many resources to break through to the spiritual sea domain, and now he had the sacred primordial body. He complains about the damn system, asking how he is supposed to cultivate now. Suddenly a new system window appears, explaining the advantages of the sacred primordial body. During the primordial era, it was an invincible physique against those of the same level, and unmatched against those of stronger levels, being the most powerful physique a human could achieve. However, the system also points out the weaknesses of the sacred primordial body. At the end of the primordial era, the laws of heaven and earth changed, and cultivating the sacred primordial body requires many resources. Even using all the resources of the Holy Land, it would be very difficult to reach the initial stages, causing stagnation in the user's foundation. In conclusion, the system states that nowadays, the sacred primordial body is useless. However, the system encourages Chu not to be discouraged, suggesting that if there are no resources, he should steal, rob from everyone he can, and kill all his enemies. The system believes it can fully develop the sacred primordial body if cultivation points are converted into resources. The protagonist asks how he would know how many cultivation points are needed to achieve this, and how he could exchange the cultivation points. The system then opens the profile window. User, Chu Shu, Identity, Heir of Rising Sky Peak, Cultivation, First Layer of the Spiritual Sea Domain, Constitution, Sacred Primordial Body, Qualifications, 317 Celestial, Cultivation Techniques, Daojing Foundation, Initial Chapter Cultivation Points, 0, Luck, less than 18 black, can absorb luck by killing those who have it. Note, luck affects your situation. People with luck can grow strong without much effort. Combat Evaluation, 19 times stronger compared to people of the same cultivation. Chu thinks that now that he has gained the sacred primordial body, he has no choice but to cultivate. He gives a sinister smile and comments that, fortunately, he still has his master. Chu leaves the back of the mansion and begins walking toward his master. In Mengdi's mansion, the master was peacefully eating an apple when someone asked if it was delicious. Mengdi responded that yes, it was delicious. When she realized who was speaking, she became angry and called him an unfaithful disciple. Chu commented that a few days without seeing her felt like seasons had passed. The protagonist sniffed his master and asked how long it had been since she last took a bath. Mengdi, irritated, responded that if he hadn't placed deadly formations at the back of the mansion, she would have a place to bathe. Chu took his master's hand and admitted that it was the fault of this disciple, offering to give her a bath. He reassured her, saying not to worry because he still liked her, even if she hadn't bathed. Mengdi asked what he planned to do with her at the back of the mansion. Chu said that, as expected of someone with the celestial fragrance body, her skin was so white and soft, even after a few days without bathing. The master, completely embarrassed, called him an unfaithful disciple. The protagonist kisses his master's hand and asks her to improve his talent and let him wash her back. The master, blushing deeply, turns her face away and calls him a damn unfaithful disciple. But soon she realizes someone is outside. In the outer pavilion of Mengdi's mansion, outside, stood Tian Jin, the master of prosperous Sky Peak. Jin calls out to Mengdi and asks if she had gone into seclusion to cultivate. Mengdi responds and apologizes, explaining that she had some issues with her cultivation and therefore couldn't come out to meet him. Suddenly a system window appears saying, "My god, the user is very bad and has once again taken advantage of his master to perform dual cultivation. Reward received, Azure Blood Sword. Jin tells his sister that he has a 7th grade healing pill made by Feng Tian's disciple from Red Sky Peak that could help her. Another system window suddenly appears saying, dual cultivation successfully completed, user's qualification increased by 100. Mengdi, with a trembling voice, says that she doesn't need it, as all she needs is a few days of rest. Another system window appears saying, dual cultivation successfully completed, user's qualification increased by 100. Jin says that's fine then, and asks if she knew that her disciple, Chu Shu, had challenged Zhang Meng from Sword Sky Peak to a life-and-death duel. He had heard that his younger sister's disciple was lazy and untalented, and he feared that if Chu lost, it would tarnish the honor of Rising Sky Peak. Mengdi, still with a trembling voice, says that she is aware of the challenge and that her disciple is responsible for his own actions, so she will let him handle it. Suddenly, a system window appears saying, user's qualifications have reached 617 celestial. Therefore, cultivation speed will be increased by 25 times. Tianjin says that his younger sister has her own considerations and that he was intruding. He mentions that the name of the song he is playing is Courting the Phoenix and that he was inspired by the moon's glow a few nights ago. He then says he will play it for his younger sister. Chu and Mengdi were lying down while listening to the music. Mengdi, blushing, thought that even while she was talking with her elder brother Tianjin, her disciple didn't stop doing those things to her. Chu comments that Master Tianjin is really amazing with the flute, and he almost wanted to give him a like. The master tells her disciple to go to hell. The protagonist, with a sinister smile, says that seeing how close they were, he wouldn't mind borrowing some cultivation resources. Suddenly, a system window appears saying, the user is very wicked. In addition to taking advantage of his master, he also took the cultivation resources. Very wicked. Reward, 500 cultivation points. In the Blue Butterfly Mansion, Qi Mengdi's residence, before her unfaithful disciple sealed her cultivation, she managed to remove and store a treasure. Moreover, he didn't search thoroughly. If he had, he would have taken the bronze fox mask. Even though it couldn't restore her cultivation level, she would use the mask to erase her presence, because as long as she had no contact with others, no one would know her cultivation had been sealed. This way, none of her enemies would hunt her down. Mengdi recalls that the mask belonged to the old demon. When he was being hunted, he dropped it. It's a pity that old demon Chu died after 100 years of cultivation. He had a great future, and if he had cultivated correctly, he wouldn't have been hunted and killed. But that matter doesn't matter now, as it's in the past. She still needs to find a way to remove that seal as soon as possible. Otherwise, she would be nothing more than a slave for him to use and enjoy. Chu senses something. In his room, he thinks that his master finally put on the bronze fox mask. It's a good thing she did because it would be difficult for him to grow stronger if someone discovered her cultivation was sealed. He feels very proud of his master. The protagonist, with the azure blood sword he received from the system, thinks that although it's not the best, it's not too bad either. He only has 3 days until the life and death battle in the arena. It's enough time to cultivate and refine his sword. Chu begins refining his sword in his room until he grasps the essence of the sword. Suddenly, a system window appears, saying, congratulations to the user for understanding the essence of the sword and refining it. A sword intent above the Raisu Holy Land has been detected. The protagonist begins to fly with his sword intent. As he flies, the system window tracks the miles he covers in Raisu Holy Land. 800 miles, 1,000 miles, 1,500 miles, 2,000 miles, 9,999 miles. Suddenly, Chu's eyes start to shine, and he wonders if this is the sword intent. The protagonist begins to comprehend the sword intent when suddenly it heads towards his forehead. He fully comprehends the sword intent when a system window appears saying, congratulations to the user for successfully encountering the Heavenly Sword Intent. Heavenly Killer Sword Intent. Category, Sword Intent. Attribute, Wind. Chu comments that the Heavenly Killer Sword Intent is highly compatible with him. The protagonist, delighted, says he will return to his master's mansion and use the system to enhance the Heavenly Killer Sword Intent. If he manages to strengthen the Heavenly Killer Sword Intent, winning the life and death duel would be very easy. In the Taisu Holy Land, at the Pacific Sky Peak, Tai Suzy, the master of the Taisu Holy Land and the Pacific Sky Peak, mentions that she sensed someone from the Holy Land seeking the sword intent. It was very interesting. Suddenly she realizes that this person actually managed to ascend 9,999 miles in search of the sword intent. How was that possible? In the last 30,000 years, only the sword god, who was in the Emperor domain, had the ability to achieve this. Suzy wonders if there is someone in her Taisu Holy Land with the potential to become the sword god. 3 days later, at Prosperous Sky Peak, in the arena where the life and death battle would take place, several people gathered to watch the fight. Jian Lingyun, from Sword Sky Peak, comments that the atmosphere was very lively. Zhang Meng tells Lingyun that he heard that recently he managed to break through to the divine domain. Lingyun responds that it was just the divine domain, nothing worth mentioning. Lingyun sees Shu Tianzhen, a disciple of Sword Sky Peak, and comments that he didn't expect her to show up there since she usually doesn't care about these things. Xu Tianzhen responds that this matter started because of her, so it was obvious she would attend. After all, Chu Xiu was dear to her, and she didn't want him to die there. Jian Lingyun, intrigued, thinks that Chu was a worthless person and had nothing special, but his younger sister Xu really appreciated him a lot. Meng comments to Tianzhen that it was impossible even for her to save a man who wanted to die. A bystander says that Chu was very weak, but even so, he had the courage to challenge Brother Zheng. He really wanted to die. Other bystanders say that Chu didn't show up because he was afraid, and they didn't understand how the Rising Sky Peak could tolerate him and still call him an elder brother. Tao Yao, the fifth disciple of Rising Sky Peak, tells the bystanders that praising the strong and humiliating the weak was what their master taught them. The bystanders, shocked, comment that Tao Yao also came to watch the battle. Blushing, they call her Sister Tao Yao. One of the bystanders sees Chu arriving and announces that Chu Xiu has appeared. Chu arrives on his flying boat, and Tao Yao runs to greet him. Chu says he is happy that she came to watch his battle. Yao responds that with all their younger sisters around, no one would dare kill him. The protagonist says she doesn't need to worry because he wouldn't disappoint her. The younger sister comments that in the last battle she did nothing, and he got hurt, which made her very uneasy and sad. Chu calls her a silly girl and says it's all right, that it wasn't her fault. The protagonist turns and sees Xu Tianzhen, thinking that if he wasn't mistaken, she was the goddess of Sword Sky Peak. She had a good appearance, and her cultivation base wasn't bad at all. Tianzhen feels that Chu Xiu seems like a different person. Meng asks Ling Yun if, now that Chu has arrived, he should kill him. Ling Yun responds that in a life-and-death battle in the arena, even if he died, no one through to the divine domain a few days ago and needed the pills. He never imagined that trash like Chu Xiu would bring them to his doorstep. Tao Yao thinks that if their master knew that the elder brother bet such a treasure, he would be punished. Chu, for his part, comments that he believed most people didn't know the value of 6th, 7th grade Tianxuan pills and asks the great elder of Prosperous Sky Peak if he knew. The elder confirms, explaining that many cultivators desired this pill, but few could buy it, as at auctions, each was sold for 1 million superior spiritual stones, totaling 6 million superior spiritual stones for the 6 pills. Everyone is astonished, wondering if there was anything to bet that compared to 6 million superior spiritual stones. Chu reassures everyone, suggesting that if someone couldn't bet that much, they could join together to bet, and if they won, they would only need to divide based on the value bet. The bystanders agree and begin betting on Chu's defeat. The protagonist advises them to bet safely, while Chu thinks he's going to win big, as many were betting on his defeat. The elder notices that many good resources were being wagered. Chu then announces that the betting time was over, and with the elder of Prosperous Sky Peak as the arbiter, no one would dare to go back on their word. He jumps into the arena to face Meng, who, feeling superior, comments that finally the trash Chu has stepped into the arena. The protagonist responds that since they would have a life-and-death battle, the only thing that mattered was being the winner. The elder of Prosperous Sky Peak then announces the start of the life-and-death. Ling Yun thinks that he will finally see Chu Xiu's death, while Zheng Meng believes that, being in the 9th layer of the spiritual sea domain, fighting against Chu Xiu, who was still in the 4th layer of the spiritual domain, would be like killing an ant. Meng advances at high speed towards the protagonist and throws a kick in his direction, but Chu dodges, throwing his body backward and quickly repositioning himself. Meng comments that Chu was fast, but challenges him to dodge 3 stakes that he throws immediately after. Chu throws himself back, doing a backflip and dodging all the stakes. Yao, worried, prays to the heavens to protect her elder brother and that nothing bad happens. The bystanders comment that Meng's attacks were ruthless, always trying to hit vital points, and that if Chu kept only dodging, he would end up losing. No matter how fast he was, he couldn't win without attacking. Meng advances again and delivers several punches, but Chu easily dodges them, provoking him and calling him out. Meng, incredulous, wonders how it was possible for that trash to have become so fast. He realizes that he couldn't keep fighting like this, or he would end up without energy, so he decides to take his sword to quickly end the fight. Meng then charges at Chu at high speed. Meng tries to hit the protagonist, but he dodges. Chu thinks that Meng wanted to suppress him using the sword's chi. The protagonist thinks this was perfect, because he could take the opportunity to test his new sword. So Chu takes out his sword and unsheathes it. The protagonist makes a few slashes in the wind to test his blade. Zheng Meng, seeing Chu's back, laughs and thinks that finally, he had shown his weakness. Then, Meng appears behind Chu, yells for him to die, and kicks him in the back. The protagonist manages to block the kick and laughs, thinking that Meng had taken the bait. With the sword in his hand, he reflects that even though his sacred primordial body is not fully cultivated, he is still invincible against opponents of the same domain. Thus, Chu charges at Meng with his sword and cuts him. Meng, incredulous, exclaims how Chu managed to dodge and counterattack, saying it was impossible. Meng falls to the ground, leaving everyone shocked by the situation. Ling Yun, outraged, wondered how Chu had won. Everyone was indignant, questioning how it was possible that Zheng Meng had actually lost. The bystanders, shocked, commented that the trash Chu had really killed a disciple at the peak of the spiritual sea domain. But how was that possible? 20 days ago, Chu Shu had his cultivation destroyed, so what had just happened? The elder declared that in the life and death battle, Chu was the winner. The bystanders began to cry, stating that they had lost 3,000 superior spiritual stones and mystic-class weapons, and they said it was an unfair defeat, vowing never to bet again. Suddenly, Chu began vomiting a lot of blood in the arena, and Tao Yao rushed over to see what was happening, asking if he was okay. The protagonist asked his younger sister to help him get out of there. With a smile, Chu thought that since he needed to pretend to be weak to defeat a tiger, he had to act convincingly and not show any flaws. In his thoughts, he apologized to his brothers and sisters, but stated that the weapons, pills, spiritual stones, and materials they had bet were now all his. Jin Lingyun thought that Chu Xiu's injury was very serious, but he wasn't worried because he intended to make him vomit even more blood and suffer in pain. Lingyun then told Cheng Lingfei, a disciple of Sword Sky Peak, that if he wanted to save his sister, he should challenge Chu Xiu, and Lingfei agreed. Lingfei ordered Chu to wait a moment and asked if he had the courage to fight him. Yao, incredulous, questioned whether Lingfei hadn't seen that her elder brother was injured, yet he still had the nerve to challenge him. What was wrong with him? Lingyun responded that the younger sister, Tao Yao's words, were a bit exaggerated because, in the arena, it was inevitable to be challenged by other disciples. Moreover, Chu Xiu had just won a bet and taken many resources from several disciples, and everyone believed that he had only won by luck. This left everyone dissatisfied, and they wanted to recover what they had lost. So why not let them get excited to recover what they had lost? It was only fair for Chu Xiu to participate in another battle. The bets would be the same as before, and if Chu Xiu won again, everyone would be convinced that it wasn't luck. Lingyun asked the protagonist if he still had the courage to bet, or if he was afraid because he was sure that the elder brother of Rising Sky Peak was too cowardly to bet. The protagonist realized that he was being deliberately provoked. Chu then stated that he was injured and in the 4th layer of the spiritual sea domain, making it very risky to face a disciple in the 1st layer of the spiritual pillar domain. So he suggested increasing the bets by 30%. Suddenly, a system window appeared saying, "The user is a cunning and greedy fox, therefore receiving a bonus of 200 cultivation points." Lingyun responded that this was fair, but in his thoughts, he considered Chu an idiot for being so greedy while being so weak. Since Chu wanted to die so badly, Lingyun wouldn't blame him for ensuring that wish. Tianzhen thought that Chu Xiu didn't know when to stop. The protagonist then announced to everyone that he, Chu Xiu, accepted the challenge and would fight another life and death battle. He asked if they wanted to recover what they had lost, or if they would leave everything to him, and stated that the new bets were open, presenting a great chance to recover what they had lost and even make some money. The bystanders commented that this time, it was absolutely impossible for Chu Xiu to defeat someone in the spiritual pillar domain, especially since he had just fought a battle and was injured. They began betting everything on Chu Xiu's defeat. Chu thought they were all fools, and thanks to this, he would make a great fortune. The elder declared that the life and death battle between Chu Xiu and Chen Lingfei had begun. Yao, worried about Chu, told him to be careful, but the protagonist reassured her, saying not to worry. Lingfei then stated that he didn't want to step into the arena to fight him, but he didn't have much choice. Chu asked why, and Lingfei responded that his younger sister had returned severely injured from a mission and needed cultivation materials and a very rare treasure to survive, and brother Lingyun had that treasure. So for the sake of his younger sister, he needed to defeat him, and he apologized if he hurt him. After all, swords are blind and can easily injure someone. Chu replied that the story was very moving, but it was a pity because now that he had stepped into the arena for a life and death battle, it didn't matter if he lived or died. The protagonist charged at Lingfei at high speed, running around him and attacked him from behind. Lingfei defended his attack and asked how he dared to make a sneak attack. Chu appeared beside him and told him not to worry because he would take good care of his younger sister so that Lingfei could rest in peace. Then, he stabbed him with his sword. The protagonist unleashed a chi attack on his back and sent him flying. Lingfei hit the barrier, dead. Chu commented that villains always die from talking too much. That was the truth of life. The protagonist sheathed his sword and said it was better to kill quickly to avoid giving time for retaliation. The bystanders were shocked and asked how that was possible, as Chu Xiu was only in the 4th layer of the spiritual domain. Yet he easily defeated Chen Lingfei. The skill Chu Xiu used, the mythical class Living Shadow, allowed him to summon 7 shadow clones and use each one to attack the enemy, something only someone who mastered the skill could do. The bystanders began to cry, having lost everything. One of them mentioned that he had borrowed 10,000 superior spiritual stones only to lose like this and end up in debt. Tao Yao told the protagonist that he was amazing, but Chu responded that it was just luck and not worth mentioning. The protagonist went towards the betting treasures and commented that it wasn't bad at all, as it had been a lucky day. Chu then said that his storage bag was already full and asked his younger sister if she had a storage bag. Yao replied that she did and tossed him a bag. The protagonist thanked Yao, who told her elder brother that there was no need to be formal, and that he could take and use it. Chu asked if those were the 7th grade Tianxuan pills they wanted. The bystanders cursed Chu, asking for some mercy, saying that he hadn't come just to fight, but to rob them and boast. The protagonist stated that since there were no more battles, he would leave, and then he took his flying boat to depart. Suddenly a system window appeared, saying that the user was truly evil and cruel, signs of a true villain, and therefore was rewarded with 200 cultivation points. Yao, worried about Chu, said that he had offended Junling Yun, who was treacherous, and that he needed to be very careful and couldn't let his guard down. In Chu Xu's room, the protagonist thought that he had gained a total of 16 million in pills, treasures, and weapons, and imagined that if it were possible to sell everything to the system in exchange for cultivation points, it would yield many points. Chu began trading the weapons with the system when a window appeared saying that the mortal class thick sword had been successfully sold, and he had received 1 cultivation point. The protagonist got angry, complaining that he had only earned 1 cultivation point. Chu asserted that this couldn't be true, that the system had made a mistake, because the last time, he had earned 5 cultivation points for trading something, so he didn't understand why he had only received 1 point this time. Suddenly, a system window appeared stating that as the user's cultivation level increases, the items also need to be of higher quality, and that a mortal class item would now only yield 1 point. Another system window appeared, stating that the cultivation points to be obtained can also vary based on quality. Then a new window popped up, saying that the user tried to be clever by offering low-quality items to accumulate many cultivation points, but that this wouldn't work. Suddenly, a system window appears, stating that spiritual stones cannot be used to exchange for cultivation points, and that insisting on doing so isn't worth it, because calculating large amounts is too bothersome. Irritated, Chu thinks the system is damn annoying. The protagonist remarks that in this case, he'll have to sell low-quality items at auctions or in city shops, and use the money to buy high-quality items, trading them for cultivation points. That way, all gains would be maximized. Meanwhile, Chu notices that the bronze fox mask is resonating and wonders who his master was talking to. At the Pacific Sky Peak, Mengdi is conversing with the Sacred Land Taisu Master, questioning if it's true that her disciple Chu Shu ascended to the deepest parts of the heavens and entered the initial land to obtain a celestial sword intent. Mengdi finds it hard to believe, as Chu's talent is low, and finding a sword intent is already extremely difficult, let alone ascending to the deepest parts of the initial land. Suzy responds that she saw it with her own eyes that night, and asks if Chu's personality has changed recently, suggesting he might have been possessed by someone. Mengdi questions if Suzy really believes that, but Suzy dismisses the idea, explaining that to possess someone, one would need at least a lower sacred domain level of cultivation, and everyone can only enter the initial land once in their lifetime, a rule that couldn't be broken by someone possessing another. Moreover, Suzy doesn't believe Chu has been possessed. Mengdi then questions how Chu managed to enter the initial land if he wasn't possessed. Suzy suggests that he might have had some unexpected opportunity and advises Mengdi to train her disciple well, as he might become a new sword god before breaking through to the Emperor Qi domain. Mengdi agrees, but at the same time wonders, train him well. What other way would he have to cultivate? Hadn't she already become a slave for that unfaithful disciple to use whenever he wanted to increase his cultivation and qualifications? Outside, Chu thinks that now that Suzy mentioned it, he and his master would have a long conversation during the night. Inside Mengdi's mansion, the protagonist tells his master that he needs advice, and Mengdi asks why he hid that from her. Surprised, Chu asks what exactly he hid. The master responds that he found a celestial sword intent. The protagonist places his hand on his master's waist and asks how she knew about that. Mengdi explains that the Sacred Land Taisu Master is sovereign within the Sacred Land and can control the rules of space and the meaning of every energy fluctuation within the Sacred Land, making it impossible to hide it from her. Chu understands and asks what the Sacred Land Master decided. He's a genius and should diligently cultivate with his master's help. The master responds that even within the Sacred Land Taisu, nothing is absolute, and like flowers cultivated in greenhouses, everyone needs to rely on themselves to achieve the desired results. Chu agrees, but approaches Mengdi, saying he's not there just to use his own strength to obtain resources. However, the master rebukes him, saying, "No, unfaithful disciple, not today." The protagonist replies that today, yes, because after all, he had nothing else to do. So, he decided to ask his master to help that disciple with cultivation. A system window appears, stating that the user is truly very wicked, because even though the master didn't want to, he's engaging in dual cultivation with her again. As a special reward, the system grants him a 6th grade superior poison pot. Then, the system window indicates that the user's talent increased by 100 points 3 times in a row. 3 hours later, another window appears, informing him that the user's qualifications increased to 917 celestial, which boosted the cultivation speed by 31 times. The system message also states that the user's cultivation has improved and that he's almost advancing to the 5th layer of the spiritual sea domain, encouraging him to keep working hard to become stronger. Chu thinks that the effects are worsening more and more, recalling that the celestial fragrance body shouldn't be so useless. He wonders if this is happening because his master's cultivation is sealed and considers the possibility of trying to release the seal next time to see if there's any improvement. Thoughtful, he thinks the idea is good, but also very dangerous. He thanks his master for her hard work in helping him, while Mengdi, indignant, thinks that one day she will take revenge for everything he has done to her and tear him into thousands of pieces. At the precious treasure peak, Chu walks through the pavilion, while some guards wonder if he is Chu Shu from the rising sky peak. One of the guards comments that he heard Chu won 2 battles in the arena. At that moment, a woman introduces herself to Chu, saying she is Chu Xiaoran, an inner disciple of Precious Treasure Peak, and asks if he came to sell some items. Chu approaches Xiaoran, places his hand on her chin, and asks how she knew he had come to sell. Playfully, he asks if the junior sister learned some secret mind-reading art. Xiaoran replies that Chu showed great skills in the arena, earning many treasures and spiritual stones, which made this news spread throughout the Taisu sacred land. Now, with him at the Precious Treasure Pavilion, it was easy for her to guess that he was there to sell items. Xiaoran then invites him to follow her, offering to show him the way. Chu reflects that he had barely arrived at the pavilion, and she had already taken the initiative to speak to him and invited him inside. He wonders what her purpose might be in doing this before he even entered the pavilion. Xiaoran notices that after entering the Precious Treasure Pavilion, Chu only observes the goods without buying anything, and she can't guess what he is thinking. Meanwhile, Chu thinks that a mortal-class weapon costs 50 superior spiritual stones, but exchanging it in the system would only yield 2 cultivation points. On the other hand, mortal-class spiritual herbs of the same value could be exchanged for 10 cultivation points, while a second-grade spiritual pill could be exchanged for 15 points. Chu realizes that the higher the concentration of spiritual energy, the greater the number of points he could exchange in the system. If he exchanged something with a large amount of spiritual energy, like a human cultivator, he could exchange it for the maximum number of points possible. Suddenly, a system window appears, praising Chu for his genius in thinking of something so cruel. The system message states that he is truly worthy of being the villain chosen by the system and rewards him with the black-silver flying boat, a land-class item. However, the system laments that although the idea is incredible and innovative, it's not possible to exchange human beings for cultivation points. Chu thinks that it's really a shame. For a moment, Xiaoran wonders if she was seeing things because she sensed a murderous intent in his eyes. The protagonist then tells Xiaoran that he wants to buy energy recovery pills and vitality restoration elixirs, spending 15 million superior spiritual stones. Surprised, Xiaoran wonders why he would need so many vitality restoration elixirs, speculating if he intends to make a medicinal bath. She promptly offers to gather the items immediately, and Chu, grateful, comments that he will trouble the junior sister with this. The protagonist thinks that he still had some superior spiritual stones left, so he would take the opportunity to look around. Maybe he would find something he needed. Suddenly, Chu's eyes light up, and he feels the bronze fragment reacting with his sword intent. What kind of mystery did that bronze fragment hide? It was as if the sword intent within his body was being drawn to it. Xiaoran says that the elixirs Chu requested had already been gathered and asks if he wanted to take a look. The protagonist responds, "Great," and asks how many superior spiritual stones would be needed to buy that bronze fragment that was in his hand. The girl replies that the fragment was something useless, just lying around, and that if he liked it, he could take it. Chu tosses a pouch into the girl's hand and says there are 100 superior spiritual stones inside because he doesn't like owing favors, then asks if they can go down to inspect the goods. Xiaoran asks Chu to please wait a moment. The protagonist turns and asks if she needed something. The girl replies that she needed Brother Chu's help. The protagonist thinks he now understood why she had approached him when he entered. The girl invites him to have some tea. He accepts and asks what she wanted, adding that if it was too troublesome, she didn't even need to mention it. Xiaoran asks if Brother Chu knows about the Taisu Sacred Tower. The protagonist responds that he does, explaining that the Taisu Sacred Tower is an imperial weapon belonging to Emperor Taisu, with great offensive and defensive power, capable of storing various things inside. It was placed on the Pacific Sky Peak, where the Emperor died. It's not only something that protects the entire Taisu sacred land, but also the best place for disciples to cultivate and train. In the tower, disciples can test their combat power, talent, comprehension, and endurance. The higher they climb, the greater the benefits they receive. Xiaoran says her request is related to the Taisu sacred tower, and asks Chu if he knows that one of the 3 secret areas of the Taisu sacred land, the Savage Demon Secret Realm, will open in a month. Chu responds that he has been busy cultivating and hasn't paid attention to the news, but he had heard that the Savage Demon Secret Realm is a great place to hunt treasures. Xiaoran explains to Chu that to enter the Taisu Sacred Tower, one must take a test, and in that test, the top 300 disciples in the spiritual sea domain and the top 1,700 disciples in the spiritual pillar domain would earn the right to enter the secret realm. Based on Brother Chu's strength, it was certain he could rank among the top 300 disciples. Xiaoran then reveals that her request is for Brother Chu to participate in the test. She leans in close to the protagonist's ear, attempting to seduce him, and asks if Brother Chu could help her. Chu agrees to the request. In Chu Xiu's room, there was a large tribulation while he was cultivating. Suddenly, a system window appeared, informing him that he had advanced to the 5th layer of the spiritual pillar domain, then to the 6th layer of the spiritual sea domain, and after that, to the 7th and 9th layers of the same domain. Curious, the protagonist asked the system what the conditions were to advance to the 10th layer of the spiritual sea domain. The system replied that it couldn't find a method to help the user reach that layer, adding that, unfortunately, the user didn't have the necessary capacity and would fail to advance. However, the system also mentioned that if the user could find 3 valuable treasures, the Panacea Milk, Puti Divine Flower, and Monster Baby Spiritual Fruit, he might be able to advance. Chu stopped cultivating and, placing his hand on his head, thought that those 3 items were divine class, so rare they could only be obtained with extreme luck, as they weren't sold at auctions. Even if someone was selling them, the price would be astronomical, and even if he found them and wanted to steal them, he wouldn't have the power to do so. Then the protagonist had an idea and remembered that Xiaoran had mentioned a disciple had obtained half of a monster baby spiritual fruit in the secret realm. Chu decided he would have to go to the sacred tower. 3 days later, a bell rang on the Pacific Sky Peak as several cultivators in flying boats headed toward the sacred tower. In the midst of the crowd, 2 masters were conversing. One old man commented that every 30 years, many disciples gathered at the peak to try their luck, and he wondered if any disciple that year would be able to break the floor climbing record. There was a board showing the top 10 best disciples who had attempted to climb the tower, with information about the participants. Mo Feiyan, an elder of the Pacific Sky Peak, was conversing with Huang Laotu, another elder of the same peak, and mentioned that a disciple in the spiritual sea domain had entered the top 10. She asked Laotu who he believed would achieve a great feat. Laotu replied that he was betting on Yefan, as he had great potential, a solid foundation, excellent talent, as well as high endurance and luck. Feiyan agreed, saying that Yefan was worth watching. Suddenly, a flying boat cut ahead of the others at great speed. Feiyan asked whose flying boat it was, noting its incredible speed. Laotu responded that the young man was the direct disciple of the master of Rising Sky Peak. Chu landed his flying boat and descended towards the sacred tower. Upon arriving, he saw a master congratulating her disciple, saying she had done very well and that she was proud of her. The disciple was Su Ruxue, the direct disciple of the master of Sky Peak, and the other sect members were congratulating her. Ye Fan, the direct disciple of the master of Sword Sky Peak, remarked that he too would enter the top 10 of the spiritual sea domain and would ring the bell at the top of the Taisu sacred tower. The protagonist asked who he was. He introduced himself, saying his name was Ye Fan. Chu thought that his name sounded just like a main character's name, and not only that, but look at the cheerful face of that bastard. Chu wondered if this guy was the main character. The protagonist said it was nice to meet him and asked how he knew about him. Hiefan replied that he had heard Chu had won many spiritual stones from prosperous Sky Peak. Chu said that it wasn't worth mentioning. Yefan thought that Chu was kind and very nice, and that it would be good to have him as a friend. The protagonist thought that Yefan's personality was just and righteous, the kind suitable for making friends, and that this was the type of person he hated the most. The board announced that it was time for Chu Xiu to begin his test. The protagonist said it was his turn to take the test, and that they would meet again. Ye Fan wished Chu good luck. Chu began climbing the stairs of the sacred tower and entered the Taisu sacred tower. On the first floor of the Taisu sacred tower, the protagonist walked until he encountered a horde of wolves. He drew his sword and wondered if only a few little wolves had come to greet him. The wolves charged at the protagonist, surrounding him. Chu used his sword Dao and charged at the wolves, cutting them down easily. The protagonist thought that just a few beasts in the spiritual sea domain wouldn't make a difference. On the 67th floor of the Taisu sacred tower, Chu encountered a woman who said she was lonely and asked him to stay with her because they would be very happy together. The protagonist slashed her neck and asked if she was trying to seduce him, remarking that she was still very inexperienced. On the 68th floor of the Taisu sacred tower, Chu encountered 4 cultivators with animal auras, one with a tiger aura, another with a turtle aura, another with a peacock aura, and finally, one with a dragon aura. The protagonist asked if they were all at the peak of the spiritual sea domain and then said, "Take this," before charging at them and defeating them easily. On the 98th floor of the Taisu sacred tower, Chu encountered Tai Suzy, who was at the peak of the 9th layer of the spiritual sea domain. The protagonist realized that her cultivation was the same as his, but he couldn't measure her full power, and asked if she was the true master of Taisu sacred land. Suzy was incredulous. Chu began to laugh and said that she really was the first empress. The protagonist drew his sword and challenged the empress to battle. Their swords clashed. Chu launched a kick towards Susie's head, but she easily defended the attack and pushed him away. Surprised, Chu wondered how that was possible, as even with his special physique, Tai Susie in the same domain as him was stronger. Besides being fast and strong, she showed no openings. Susie then gathered chi in her hand and quickly advanced towards Chu, who counterattacked with equal speed, resulting in a clash between their attacks. The protagonist realized that Susie's attack was stronger than his. Amidst the battle, Chu thought that it was damage for damage, life for life. Either he would die, or she would die. That was his fighting style. Susie's attack pierces through Chu, and as he bleeds, he thinks it's unfair, as even after using his sword intent, she was still able to resist. Determined, Chu, despite being gravely injured, doesn't release Tai Susie's neck until he defeats her. When Susie stops moving, he finally lets go, thus completing the test on the 99th floor of the sacred tower. Now, on the 100th floor, Chu doesn't remember how he got there, or if he fought anyone, and he wonders why he has no recollection of it. However, he knows that this is not the right time to dwell on it. Before him are 4 pillars, and he wonders if he should choose one. Upon making his choice, a system window appears, instructing him to learn sword skills and techniques within 12 hours. The more he learns, and the greater his comprehension, the better his evaluation will be. The skills begin to flood his mind, and Chu questions whether these are all the skills and techniques the pillar offers. Determined to speed up the process, Chu commands the system to consume advancement points for learning. The system responds, activating consumption mode. 5 advancement points are spent. Then 35, 100, and finally 1,000 advancement points are used for him to learn sword skills and techniques. Chu realizes that in this life, everything is different. Besides the sacred primordial body, he has the system with innovative skills and the celestial sword intent. Determined to strengthen himself as much as possible, he reflects that with the sacred primordial body, he is practically invincible against those of the same domain, and with the sword intent, he is incomparable. By combining these elements with the knowledge of the skills and techniques he acquired, he wonders if he can develop a powerful attack method. Chu decides to master a 2-handed heavy sword, believing that only such a sword could withstand and take advantage of his sacred primordial body and sword intent. He begins training with a giant sword, and upon unleashing a great strike, he cuts through the entire floor in front of him. At that moment, a new system window appears, declaring, "First form, annihilation, bring an end to all things." The protagonist then starts laughing and declares that his name is Chu Xiu, the one who will annihilate all. And even if anyone stands against him, Chu believes that no one will be able to escape this strike. He concludes that the 1,000 points spent to learn everything were well worth it. Chu commands the system to analyze his new skill, and the system message reports, name, first form, annihilation, category, sword skill, class, immortal, style, sword movement, destructive power, 5 stars, attack speed, 4 stars. The system then presents the skill's introduction, describing it as a dominating strike with an instant explosion of energy, created by using the energy of the sacred primordial body and the celestial sword intent. With great attack speed and high destructive power, it is capable of eliminating enemies. However, the system warns that the second form of the skill is still unknown and not yet comprehended, advising Chu not to attempt understanding it now, as it could lead to his death. In the square in front of the Taisu Sacred Tower, Akira, Mengdi's nephew, is conversing with Xiaoran and asks if she really believes that Chu Xiu will be able to climb more than 80 floors and get the items he needs. He expresses the desire for this to end soon, so that he can have time to see his aunt Mengdi and ask for some pills. It had already been 10 days, and Chu Xiu still hadn't exited the tower, leading Akira to fear that he might have died inside, as every time the Taisu Sacred Tower opens, some disciples end up dying. Xiaoran, however, assures Akira that her older brother Chu Xiu will be fine. Then the Sacred Tower's bell begins to ring, announcing that someone had entered the top 10. Suddenly, on the stone that displays the top 10 rankings of the Sacred Tower, the name Chu Xiu from Rising Sky Peak appears. Everyone is shocked and falls silent. When Chu Xiu finally exits the Sacred Tower, he thanks them for waiting, and Xiaoran expresses relief that he wasn't hurt. The disciples around begin to shout that Chu is incredible and ask for autographs. The protagonist reflects that, when he was known as the old demon Chu, these same disciples would see him and shout, "Die, damned demon." And now, they were excited about his name. He concludes that the new choices he made were indeed important. While signing autographs, Chu thinks that being a villain who flaunts power is very simple and boring, but he was very young when he made that choice, and the result was his death. Now, he believes that a true villain should be strong and purposeful, doing bad things secretly without talking about them. Suddenly, Lao Tu and Fei Yan appear behind Chu. Lao Tu comments that he is impressed with his performance, while Fei Yan informs him that the master of Pacific Sky Peak wishes to see him. At the Pacific Sky Pavilion, Mengdi and Tai Suzy are waiting. Chu Xiu greets them formally. Chu Xiu, from Rising Sky Peak, greets the master of the Taisu Sacred Land and the master of Rising Sky Peak. Mengdi seems uncomfortable, while Susie expresses satisfaction in seeing how far her disciple has climbed the tower, considering his performance impressive. Chu asks the master of the sacred land if, having completed the sacred tower, he will receive some kind of reward. He thinks that even if there aren't immediate benefits, things could get interesting. Mengdi tells Chu to be more respectful and not rude to the master of the sacred land. Tai Suzy, however, tells Mengdi that it's all right and asks Chu what kind of reward he would like to receive. The protagonist responds that if the master has panacea milk, puti divine flower, or monster baby spiritual fruit, any of those would suffice. Mengdi, indignant, thinks that the unfaithful disciple is truly very greedy. Tai Suzy explains that there are many treasures in the sacred land that defy heaven and earth, but none of them are what he desires. However, she could ask someone to go out searching for them, but she couldn't guarantee how quickly they could be found. Chu replies that he is willing to wait and thinks that it is very easy to converse with Tai Suzy. He considers that if he used the celestial samsara seal on her, he could have her under his command. Suddenly, a system window appears with the message that the user is truly very wicked, as, not satisfied with Mengdi, he now wants Tai Suzy. Without hesitation, Chu uses the celestial samsara seal on Tai Suzy. Another system window appears, informing him that the seal was successfully used and that Tai Suzy is now under the user's servant seal, still unaware of it. The system also informs him that there are no more uses of the seal left, as the first servant seal was on Chi Mengdi and the second on Tai Suzy. The system adds that the user can remove the servant seal whenever he wants, and that after the seal is recovered, the number of uses will increase by 1, allowing the activation and use of both servant seals simultaneously. Chu is shocked to learn that he can activate both seals simultaneously and imagines himself doing dual cultivation with Mengdi and Tai Suzy. Suddenly, another system window appears, declaring that the user is indeed the predestined villain, daring to imagine doing dual cultivation with the master of the sacred land and Chi Mengdi. As a reward for his evil thoughts, Chu receives the basic alchemy book. The system explains that the book is divided into 3 volumes, containing thousands of alchemy methods and poison formulas. Once fully mastered, it is possible to prepare poisons capable of killing even someone in the Emperor domain. If the 3 volumes are combined, it will become the Supreme Alchemy Book, created by the Alchemy Emperor of the human race many years ago. Chu thinks that this reward is incredible because only someone qualified as a true villain can poison others. Tai Suzy then mentions that the 8 trigrams ginseng has an excellent effect for strengthening chi and blood, and until he finds what he desires, she hopes this can help. Chu thanks her and says he will make good use of the gift. The protagonist and Mengdi prepare to leave, while Suzy, for some reason, feels a sense that something is wrong, but she doesn't know what it could be. Could someone be conspiring against her? Perhaps she has spent too much time in seclusion and is now having illusions. It was better to leave, clear his head, and relax. In the main cabin of the flying boat were Chu and Mengdi, with 2 women serving them. Chu asked the junior sisters to leave them alone, saying that the elder brother needed to talk with the master. Mengdi, with a trembling voice, responded with a no. The sisters asked, "Master of Rising Sky Peak?" Mengdi disguised her discomfort, coughed, and said it was nothing, telling them they could leave. The protagonist sealed the doors and activated a soundproofing system. Chu said that now it was just the 2 of them in the main cabin of the flying boat and that they shouldn't waste the beautiful scenery. Mengdi removed the fox mask and, calling him an unfaithful disciple, asked if he wanted to intimidate her again. She questioned if he really saw her only as a tool, something he could use whenever he wanted. The protagonist replied that, in his eyes, she was just a degenerate person who only thought about that. Mengdi retorted, "And isn't it true?" Chu then asked the master if she wanted him to remove the seal on her cultivation. The master trembled and said yes. The protagonist took the fox mask and commented that the artifact was very good. Even with her cultivation sealed, it managed to hide that from others, and not even someone as strong as Tai Suzy, the master of the sacred land, realized that Mengdi's cultivation was sealed. Mengdi called him an unfaithful disciple and remarked that his concealment skills were also impressive, but that after they slept together again, he would end up with a stained body because of her special physique. However, since he was very good at hiding, she believed he would also be able to hide the scent. Blushing, Mengdi thought that it was a good thing Chu knew how to conceal, or what had happened between them would be exposed to everyone in the sacred land. The master mentioned that he had brought up something about removing the seal on her cultivation. Chu confirmed this. Mengdi asked what the conditions would be, as he wasn't so kind as to do something without wanting anything in return. The protagonist handed something to the master and told her to try it first. Mengdi asked what it was, and Chu said she just needed to wear it, and she would be rewarded. Mengdi put on the stockings, but Chu took the opportunity to touch her. Blushing, the master asked what that unfaithful disciple was doing. The protagonist replied that she still called him unfaithful disciple after everything they had done and asked her to call him brother. Mengdi turned her head and told him to keep dreaming, saying that even if she died, she would never call him that. Chu commented that this made things difficult. 10 minutes later, Chu told the master to just relax and not worry. Mengdi told him to stop dreaming, reminding him that she was the master of Rising Sky Peak, and asked if he thought she would always be at his disposal. Chu approached his master and said she was very beautiful, but advised her not to shout too loudly, or all the disciples on the ship would know what they were doing. Completely flushed, Mengdi said he was exaggerating, but she ended up giving in and called him brother. Then, Mengdi called him unfaithful disciple again, and said that sooner or later she would kill him with her own hands. Outside the flying boat, at Rising Sky Peak, Chu was walking and thinking that it was thanks to Chu Xiaoran that he was able to participate in the Sacred Tower. But now, the matter of the Sacred Tower was already resolved. The information provided by Xiaoran was very detailed. The monster baby spiritual fruit was indeed in the savage demon secret realm. During the journey to the realm, nothing mattered except victory, so he would need to cultivate diligently. Two background characters were talking and commented that the Celestial Horizon newspaper had been updated. One of them asked if it was true that the newspaper was updated and mentioned that the old demon Chu had died a long time ago, so someone should take his place. The Celestial Horizon newspaper records all events, big or small, across the continent, from the combat power of a certain cultivator to even meaningless gossip. Each copy of the newspaper is worth a mid-grade spiritual stone. Chu thought they were a bunch of idiots. Not only was the old demon Chu not dead, but he was also very much alive and in the sacred land. The background characters commented that the fourth person on the lower saints list had also been replaced. It used to be Zhang Xianling from the celestial yin-yang sect, but now it was Liu Hongyi. The other character asked who Liu Hongyi was, and if she was strong because Zhang Xianling was his goddess. The protagonist thought to himself, Liu Hongyi, could it really be her? Chu greets the extras and asks if they could sell him the latest edition of the Celestial Horizon newspaper. The extras tell him he can take it, and the protagonist thanks them before grabbing the newspaper. One of the extras asks the other if he's heard that Chu's older brother made it onto the celestial list, and suggests it would be wise not to offend him. The other responds that he has heard, but questions how he became so powerful. In the latest news from the continent, it's reported that the old demon Chu, who was previously at the top of the Lesser Saints list, is dead. Now the first on the list is Yao Guang from the Holy Land, shining brightly in first place. Zhang Xianli, who was the lesser saint of the Yin-Yang celestial sect and occupied fourth place, has been replaced by Liu Hongyi of the Red Dust Sword sect. Reports from the last 6 months indicate that barbarians and demons have begun to invade human territories on a large scale. Chu thinks to himself that Hongyi really made it onto the Lesser Saints list, and is now in fourth place. The protagonist sees the wanted notices, which state that the lesser saint Liu Hongyi betrayed and attacked the Red Dust Sword sect, with a bounty of 1 million divine spirit stones on her head. According to the leader of the Red Dust Sword sect, they used a time-space artifact to discover what happened, and Liu Hongyi stealthily attacked and killed an elder who participated in the siege against the old demon Chu, apparently out of revenge. The Red Dust Sword sect issued a warning, urging their comrades to surround and kill this woman, reminding them never to underestimate the enemy. Chu remembers the girl and calls her foolish. The protagonist begins to recall his past when she introduced herself, saying her name and mentioning that her entire family was dead. Chu remembers introducing himself and saying that his family was all on the other side of the starry sky, so he couldn't see them anymore. The girl said that since he helped her bury her family, from that day on they would be family. He agreed with her, stating that from that day on, they would be family, and they made a pact. Back in the present, the protagonist uses sound resonance over several miles and asks his younger sister Tao Yao if she could help him find someone's whereabouts. Yao arrives at the place where Chu was and asks what he was thinking, watching the moon alone. Chu replies that he was just feeling a bit homesick. Tao Yao comments that it had been about 30 years since he came to the Rising Sky Peak, and that back then, the mortal realm where he lived, Qishan County, was attacked by demons, and it was the master who saved him and brought him to the sect. Time passes too quickly, Yao says, adding that the older brother was very lucky back then, as he was only 3 years old and managed to survive the demon attack. She mentions that, as the saying goes, if one doesn't die because of a disaster, they will have luck in the future. All blessings were with Chu. Yao also says that even though Qishan County is his hometown, the Holy Land is also his home. The master and everyone at Rising Sky Peak are his family, and if he feels homesick in the future, he can find her anytime, and she will help him. The protagonist thanks her, saying that everyone at Rising Sky Peak is his wings. Chu thinks that, 30 years ago, Chu Shu was just a tool and would never have survived by luck. He only stayed alive so that he could take over his body, and he comments that the same thing happened when he met Qi Mengdi, as his goal was always to infiltrate the Holy Land from within. Yao, blushing, thinks that lately, she's felt that the older brother has become a different person, as he used to avoid her, but now he stays close to her and touches her. Yao lifts her feet and gives Chu a kiss on the cheek, leaving the protagonist stunned by her actions. Tao Yao says that the information he had requested was there and hands him a letter. She tells Chu to rest well, as she needed to return to her cultivation. The protagonist feels embarrassed and can't believe she kissed him, thinking he needed to calm down. Chu takes the information Yao gave him and begins to read, seeing that 3 days ago, Liu Hongyi appeared in the Dongzhou Empire, in the city of Chang'an. He thinks that the city of Chang'an might be a bit difficult. In the eastern continent, in the Dongzhou Empire, in the city of Chang'an, an old man was shouting, asking if she wanted to become like the old demon Chu and be an enemy of all human forces. This is Liu Hongyi, the former lesser saint of the Red Dust Sword sect. The old man yells that his Ji family would not let her get away with it, and that she could be sure they would tear her body to pieces. Liu Hongyi strikes the old man with lightning from her sword, killing him. She lands on the ground, and a shadowy figure appears, asking what she was going to do next. Liu Hongyi responds that she was going to kill more people. The shadowy man asks if she really wanted to do that and become an enemy of the world. The woman replies that if he was the enemy of the world, then she too would be an enemy of the world, and says that if he were a Buddha, she would fight for his sake, and if he were a demon, she would massacre the world in his name. Back on the cliff where Chu was, the protagonist was cultivating and thought that he still hadn't practiced the skill he had gained from the master of the Holy Land. Since he was in a quiet and deserted place, no one would disturb him. Suddenly, a system window appears, informing him about the 9 royal marks, also known as the 9 secrets, a powerful skill between heaven and earth. By fully mastering the 9 marks, one can become invincible. The Xingzi secret is the fastest secret art in the world, and by cultivating it to the extreme, it is possible to break through large formations with ease. The greatest difficulty lies in comprehension, and to cultivate it, one must have rare talent and great understanding. Chu sighs, stands up, and comments that the Xingzi secret was really difficult to comprehend. 3 days had passed, and he had made almost no progress. Chu notices someone behind him and asks who was there. A woman appears and introduces herself, saying her name is Hua Luofei and that she is an elder of the Consent Sky Peak. She asks if he is Chu Shu. Chu senses that something is strange and wonders why she had a servant seal from the Samsara celestial seal. Noting that Tai Suzy was using a different form to meet him, the protagonist finds it interesting. He greets Elder Huo and asks if she could tell him the reason she came there. Elder Huo responds that after finishing what she had to resolve, she decided to take a walk around Rising Sky Mountain and happened to stumble upon him while he was cultivating. Seeing that he was working so hard, she concluded that he was planning to go to the Wild Demon Secret Realm. Chu confirms, saying that the Secret Realm offers many opportunities for growth, but with them also come dangers, so he needed to cultivate diligently to ensure he could overcome any challenge. The protagonist looks at the elder, who is sitting there, and thinks that she was very beautiful. Chu sits near her and comments that he was curious about something, asking if she could clarify it for him. The elder responds that he could go ahead and speak. The protagonist says that before the era of Emperor Luo, there was a human considered a great emperor and a demon emperor, in an era that lasted 100,000 years. The human race and the demon race fought many times until the era of Emperor Luo, but why didn't the human race manage to completely exterminate the demons after the rise of the great Emperor Luo? And why didn't even the demons manage to exterminate the humans before that? Chu reflects that this was something he hadn't understood since his first reincarnation, and now that he met Tai Suzy, perhaps she knew the answer. The woman says that there seemed to have been a great understanding between the human great emperor and the demon emperor. Even with the rise of a new great emperor, he could suppress the other side, but he could not use his great emperor powers to destroy the other party. However, no one knew the reason why. It was said that when someone becomes a great emperor, they learn secrets about the stars and the continent. The protagonist comments that there could then be beings more powerful than a great emperor in that world. The woman responds that no one knows if there is a more powerful existence, but before the era of war, the primordial era, and the era of the great Emperor Luo, 17 great emperors had already emerged, yet they ultimately disappeared without leaving any trace in the world. Those who become great emperors possess exceptional talents, so why didn't they take the next step? Could it be that the path ahead doesn't exist, is destroyed, or there is no future to pursue? This was something they would have to deeply consider, but she hadn't expected to discuss the cultivation of a great emperor, as it was very ambitious. The protagonist asks if the elder was already planning to leave. She responds affirmatively, and urges Chu to continue dedicating himself to his cultivation. Chu asks if they would meet again, and the woman confirms, saying they would meet after he leaves the Wild Demon's secret realm. The protagonist agrees, saying it was settled, and that once he returns, he will be waiting for her there. The elder agrees. Suddenly, a system window appears saying, "The user truly has charisma, how mischievous." At Chimengdi's pavilion, Chu comments that cultivating the Xingzi secret required a lot of effort, so it would be better for him to find his master and ask for some cultivation materials. Outside, the protagonist hears someone asking his master for help, saying that it would be too late afterward, and that since she was Chushu's master, if she asked for the silver sand, he would deliver it. Mengdi responds that it's not that she doesn't want to help, but that even though she is Chushu's master, it wouldn't be right to ask him for something without reason. Chu, lost in his thoughts, wonders if it was the master's nephew, and recalls that he always treated his younger sister Xiaoran poorly. Even though he was strong, he didn't seem like much, and since the great-nephew wanted the silver sand so badly, it would be fun to play with that fool. The protagonist enters the hall and asks Akira if he wanted the silver sand. Akira approaches and asks if he still had the silver sand. Chu responds that yes, he still had it, because he had been cultivating in the last few days and hadn't seen his younger sister, Xiaoran. He was looking for an opportunity to deliver it to her. Akira says that's great, and asks what Chu thought about giving the silver sand to him so he could help deliver it to Xiaoran. The protagonist shows the silver sand, and comments that it was something he obtained after facing great challenges. Akira thought that if he could get his hands on the silver sand, he would become the only person on the continent to possess such a thing. He thinks that when the time comes, Chu Xiaoran, who desired to save her mother, would have no choice but to beg him. Akira asks the price, and the protagonist suggests 1 million divine spirit stones. Akira accepts and comments that Chu is really a great person, thinking that he would extort him, but surprisingly, he was generous. Chu comments that since Akira is his master's nephew, he considers him a precious friend. Akira agrees, saying yes, they were good friends. Chu mentions that he still had a bit more silver sand left, and asks if Akira still needed more, offering to sell everything at the same price. Akira replies yes, and asks how much he still had, thinking he needed to monopolize all the silver sand. Otherwise, it would be difficult to have Chu Xiaoran in the palm of his hands. The protagonist says he only had a few left and throws a pile on the ground. Akira, shocked, asks if that was just a few. Chu says that if he bought everything, he could keep it all to himself. Akira calls Chu Shu a scoundrel and asks his aunt if she wasn't going to say anything. Mengdi intervenes, saying that's enough, and that if Akira has already obtained the silver sand he wanted so much he should leave. Akira calls for his aunt, but turns and leaves, all irritated. Mengdi asks her unruly disciple why he provoked Akira. The protagonist responds that he didn't provoke him, insisting it was clearly a fair deal, and then sits close to his master, asking why she had called him. The master, annoyed, calls him an unfaithful disciple again. Chu picks up a feather and playfully says, "Unfaithful disciple again," commenting that she needed to be obedient and call him brother. Mengdi retorts that it would only happen in his dreams. The protagonist starts tickling his master and comments that her body had become more voluptuous compared to 15 days ago, asking if she had perhaps gained weight. Chu asks his master to let her disciple check her body properly, while continuing to tickle her. Mengdi grabs an apple and throws it at Chu, telling him to get out, asserting that she hadn't gained any weight. The protagonist catches the apple and starts eating it, asking if she had done what he had requested. The master responds that it was in the imperial palace and tells him to wait as she goes to retrieve it. In Mengdi's imperial palace, Chu asks his master where it is. Mengdi replies that it's there and retrieves a chest. Chu takes out a pearl and comments that, as expected of his master, she was a very skilled artisan. The master explains that besides emitting light, the pearl could also generate heat, and that using it to massage the acupuncture points on the soles of the feet would bring great benefits for recovery and cultivation. Mengdi, blushing, asks what he thought he was doing. Chu responds that she is an incredible woman. The master comments that he must have requested that just to play with her. Chu lays his master down and asks what she wanted. Mengdi, embarrassed, says she made a big mistake. Suddenly, a system window appears with the following information. User, Chu Xiu. Cultivation, 9th layer of the spiritual sea domain. Special physique, sacred primordial body. Qualification, celestial talent, 1,414 classes with cultivation speed increased by 33 times. Sword intent, celestial slayer. Sword intent, cultivation techniques, Tao scripture, initial chapter, well-trained villain secret art, techniques, basic alchemy book, sword skill, first form of annihilation, immortal class, 1,124 uses needed to unlock the second form. Cultivation points, 215, luck value, 82, white, with the ability to absorb luck from powerful individuals after killing them. Combat power, 35 times the combat power of a common cultivator in the same domain. Mengdi smiles and comments that finally, that unfaithful disciple had left. Just now, he got carried away with arrogance and removed her seal, and it seems he forgot to reactivate it before leaving. The master begins to cultivate, thinking that Chu really did forget to activate the seal, and how good it felt to be able to cultivate again. Mengdi says, "Just wait for me," forming power in her hand. Suddenly the power vanishes from Mengdi's hand, leaving her startled. The master asks why the seal had activated. The protagonist uses a sound transmission talisman and tells her not to misunderstand, but just to inform her that even if they are apart, he could still seal her whenever he wanted. Mengdi grabs a doll resembling Chu Shu in one hand and a stake in the other, starting to say, "Damn unfaithful disciple, die, die, die." When Mengdi notices something, she questions why she was feeling some movements in her abdomen. 7 days later, in front of the portal to the Wild Demon secret realm, several cultivators were waiting for the secret realm to open. Tai Suzy explained that the secret realm would remain open for 30 days, and at the end of that period, Everyone should gather at the initial teleportation point, or they would be trapped for several decades until it opened again. She also mentioned that after leaving the secret realm, everyone would have to contribute a portion of the gains obtained, with rankings based on these contributions. The 10 disciples who contributed the most would receive corresponding rewards. The protagonist thought that regardless of the rankings and rewards, he only wanted to get the monster baby fruit that was in the secret realm. Suzy instructed the cultivators to wait until the teleportation array was activated. After that, they could enter the secret realm. Amid the cultivators, Ye Fan appeared, calling out to Chu Shu and asking if he was also going to enter the secret realm. The protagonist replied that he was, just like Ye Fan. Ye Fan thought that venturing with Chu, who was destined to be the protagonist, meant the journey would be anything but peaceful. Chu asked what Ye Fan was thinking about and if something was wrong, to which Ye Fan responded that it was nothing and suggested they go, as the secret realm was about to open. The protagonist agreed and started walking, while Ye Fan, with a look of disdain, watched Chu's back. Suddenly, a sound transmission instructed Ye Fan that once inside the secret realm, at the first opportunity, he must eliminate Chu Shu and leave no evidence. It would be better if Chu died in the secret realm because, once it closed, no one would care. And even if the master of the Holy Land used time regression, no one would know what happened. In an ancient forest, atop a millennial tree, a woman was seated, giving instructions to Ye Fan through the sound transmission. The woman's name was Liu Shui, master of the Sword Sky Peak. She thought of Qi Mengdi and remarked that she had arranged for several disciples to eliminate Mengdi's beloved disciple once he entered the secret realm. Liu Shui reflected that Mengdi shouldn't blame her for being cruel. After all, it was Mengdi's fault for allowing her disciple to become as treacherous as she was. In the distance, Liu Shui saw 2 cultivators flying on a flying boat. One was Zhan Lingyun, the heir disciple of Sword Sky Peak. The other was Xiao Yifeng, the second disciple of Rising Sky Peak. Lingyun told Yifeng that as the elder brother on the peak, he was supposed to be a brother to Chu Shu. He questioned whether it was really a good thing to do that, and whether Yifeng didn't fear provoking the wrath of the master of Rising Sky Peak after Chu Shu's death, given that he was the current genius of the peak and a candidate for the sacred sun. Yifeng replied that a dead genius isn't considered a genius, and the greatest kindness is to be killed by a brother. Besides, Chu Shu was causing too many problems for everyone, so eliminating him as soon as possible was the right choice. Liu Shui thought she wasn't the only one who wanted to eliminate Chu Shu, and agreed with them because Qi Mengdi wasn't a good person, and neither was her disciple. The protagonist was waiting for the secret realm to open when Yao and Xiaoran called out to Chu Shu. Yao asked Xiaoran why she was there too, and Xiaoran replied that, of course, it was to wish her elder brother Chu good luck. Chu, in a playful tone, asked if by any chance the 2 lovely younger sisters had important matters to resolve. Suddenly, a system window appeared stating, "The user has a lot of luck in love, perhaps on the path to becoming the true king of a harem." Tao Yao handed a sword to Chu and said it was the sovereign dragon sword that he had asked her to find, and fortunately, she had found it in the past few days. So she rushed to deliver it, hoping it would be useful. Suddenly, a system window appeared with the description of the sovereign dragon sword. Category: heavy sword. Class: earthly. Function: infused with true chi or spiritual energy, can increase cutting damage. Description: this sword was created from the spine of an ancient beast, the Azure Dragon. It is resilient and heavy, a weapon with dominant power. However, if the person wielding it does not have sufficient strength, it could cause damage to the meridians. Chu took the sovereign dragon sword and tested its aura, saying the sword was excellent, thanking Tao Yao, who responded that she was glad to have pleased her elder brother. The girl told Chu to be extremely careful after entering the secret realm because, since the secret realm opened only once every few decades, it was likely full of wild and ancient demon beasts. She also advised him not to take unnecessary risks. Chu patted Yao's head and thanked his younger sister for her concern, assuring her that he would be very careful. The girl, relieved, said that now she wouldn't have to worry. Chu then turns to Xiaoran and asks what she had come to do. Xiaoran replies that she had found some materials for setting up arrays, which could be very useful inside the secret realm. The protagonist thanks Xiaoran and comments that she was very kind. Xiaoran in turn thanks Chu and says that thanks to the silver sand he gave her, her mother had awakened. She asks if when he returns, he could come to her house for some tea, as her mother wanted to thank him personally. The protagonist responds that she is indeed very kind and that after he returns, he will definitely visit her and bring a gift for her mother. The portal to the secret realm opens, and Tai Suzy announces to the cultivators that the teleportation array was activated, and the disciples who had earned the right to enter should prepare themselves. The protagonist tells the younger sisters that he is leaving and bids them farewell. Yao comments that Chu was really in a hurry, since she hadn't even finished speaking. Xiaoran says that there were essential items in the secret realm, so it was obvious that Chu was eager to enter. Tao Yao, irritated, frowns and tells Xiaoran to stay away from her elder brother, saying not to act as if she understood him so well. Xiaoran, surprised, asks what Tao Yao meant by that, asserting that she and brother Chu Shu had an honest and transparent relationship. Nothing dirty, as Yao thought. Why should she stay away from him? Xiaoran also comments that Yao shouldn't be so impatient and angry, because if she keeps it up, she'll end up with wrinkles. Tao Yao, visibly annoyed, asks if she was being impatient and angry. Xiaoran responds that Tao Yao was acting like a jealous girlfriend, so it's no wonder brother Chu left quickly. Tao Yao, irritated, ends up releasing her aura and asks if Chu Xiaoran was provoking her, scaring those around her with her presence. In the wild demon secret realm, several cultivators were discussing how vast the place was. One of them comments that his master had said the secret realm was over 10 million miles in diameter. With such a large area, there should be many opportunities, so it would be better to form groups. That way each group could explore a corner in search of treasures. Meanwhile, the protagonist, away from the group, pondered whether he should look for Ye Fan. He believed that by traveling with Ye Fan, he could take advantage of his protagonist's aura and significantly increase his gains. Suddenly, a group of extras shouts upon spotting Chu Shu, urging everyone to attack together. Chu, incredulous, wonders what he could have done to offend someone, as he couldn't remember anything recent. Suddenly, a system window appears, asking, couldn't the user be a bit more perceptive? The extras draw their weapons, surrounded by aura, and charge at Chu. The protagonist starts running, realizing he couldn't fight against so many opponents. He quickly grabs his flying boat, commenting that the best strategy in such a situation was to retreat. Chu jumps onto the boat and takes off at high speed. The extras shout that he was fleeing, but the bald extra reassures the others, saying that before entering the secret realm, brother John Ling Yun had given them an aura tracking compass, and it had already locked onto Chu Xu's aura. Even if he fled to the ends of the earth, it wouldn't help. In the depths of the wild demon secret realm, there was a monster baby spirit fruit on top of a mountain. However, to reach it, the protagonist needed to face a giant python, an emperor-level demon beast. The python opens its mouth to attack Chu, but he activates the Xingzi secret and charges at the giant python, easily cutting off its head and defeating it. Suddenly, the dead snake begins to transform into a black flower. Then, a system window appears asking if he would like to exchange it for cultivation points. Chu accepts the exchange, and a system message informs him that the exchange was successful, and he obtained 70,000 cultivation points. The protagonist sighs, commenting that he had finally gathered the 500,000 points. Suddenly, a new system window appears, asking him to choose one of the options to be improved. Celestial Slayer Sword Intent, Dao Scripture, First Form of Annihilation, Sword Skill, Xingzi Secret, or the Basic Alchemy Book. Due to Chu's unique constitution, his innate talent was enhanced, and his understanding of the Xingzi Secret deepened, granting him new insights and greater comprehension. He remarks that he successfully improved the Xingzi Secret technique and decides that it's time to retrieve the monster baby spirit fruit. Chu ascends the mountain with his flying boat to where the fruit was located. Upon observing the color of the fruit, he realizes that it hasn't ripened yet. A new system window appears, informing him that his luck is too low and that the monster baby spirit fruit has not ripened. Despite having fought a great battle against the giant python, the fruit still hadn't matured, which he considers a great misfortune. Frustrated, Chu comments that since the fruit hasn't ripened, there's nothing he can do about it. Suddenly, another system window appears, saying, "Damn, you shouldn't be plotting things, you villain. You really are the old demon." The protagonist was searching and gathering spiritual herbs when a group of extras appeared, commenting, "Senior brother Chu Shu is also here." The leader of the group, Chen Mufan, asked Chu if he was there alone. The protagonist, in response, simply asked if they were also there to kill him. Mufan, through a sound transmission to his group, instructed them to hide their killing intent and not let Chu notice, as he was very fast, and if he tried to escape, they alone wouldn't be able to stop him. "First, let's try to stall him until the others arrive so we can surround him," the group members responded. "Understood, leader." Mufan, feigning innocence, asked what the meaning of that was, as it was a great offense to kill fellow disciples, and asked Chu if someone was chasing him. The girl in the group, curious, asked who would dare to chase a great disciple like senior brother Chu, and suggested that he tell them who was after him, as perhaps they could help. Chu sighed and said that he didn't know the identity of the pursuers, but that there were indeed some people after him. The girl then took the protagonist's hand and asked if he wanted to join them, saying that if they encountered the pursuers, they could help him. The other group members assured Chu that if he joined them, no one would dare lay a hand on him. The girl, with a sweet expression, thought to herself that they were acting like pros, while Chu reflected that this junior sister seemed very capable. The girl used a sound transmission to calm her group, saying that although Chu seemed like a pervert, he had a big heart. The other extras commented that showing concern for his safety was really amusing, but little did he know that they were also after him. However, they couldn't blame him after all. They were very convincing. The chubby one in the group commented that Chu was a genius who had surpassed limits, undoubtedly a pillar for the future of the Holy Land, and that even if they all were killed, the senior brother would be safe, as the losses for the Holy Land would be too great. The girl told Chu to stay with them, assuring him that they would help him. The protagonist, touched, responded that he was deeply moved by everyone and that, since that was the case, he would agree to join them. The girl hugged Chu, trying to seduce him, and assured him that he didn't need to worry, as they were all like a family in the Holy Land, while pressing her chest against Chu's arm. The protagonist then asked everyone to follow him and commented that he had a roasted lamb that was prepared by his junior sister Xiaoran, and that she had given it to him before he entered the secret realm. He mentioned that even if he wanted to, he couldn't eat it all by himself, but fortunately, they found him there, so they could eat together. The group of extras was left speechless. The protagonist served the girl and said that since they had met, it must be fate, so they should enjoy themselves, eat and drink until they were happy. Mufan commented that Brother Chu didn't need to be so polite. Chu began to drink the wine. The girl thought that there was no poison in the wine, and another extra commented that the wine was wonderful. The protagonist said it was excellent wine from his master's cellar, which he had taken secretly, and suggested that they eat the roasted lamb and drink plenty of alcohol, as those are the things a true man does. The extras remarked that the meat was also delicious. Chu then said that since it was good and tasty, they should have more, and if it wasn't enough, he had more in his storage ring. After the banquet, Chu calls the group together. The group of bystanders comments that Chu could speak. The protagonist mentions that Yifeng and Ling Yun had offered so many benefits that they were willing to kill him. The group of bystanders is shocked, and Mufan asks when he had noticed, while grabbing his hammer. Chu replies that it was obvious from the moment they showed up. Mufan charges at the protagonist with his hammer and attacks him. Chu uses the Xingzi secret technique and dodges Mufan's attack with ease, telling them they'd better check their bodies. The group of bystanders notices a mark growing inside their bodies and asks if he had poisoned the wine. The protagonist responds that his poison wasn't in the wine. Suddenly, a system window appears saying, "I'm cracking up. Our poison is absolutely authentic and contains no traces. Even if you check the wine, you'll never find anything." Chu asks the bystanders if they want to stay alive, as he could give them a chance. Mufan asks Chu what they should do. The protagonist throws a scroll with instructions to the group and tells them to follow the directions he had given. He had a bottle with 10 antidote pills that would keep them alive for 3 days, and after they completed the task, he would remove the poison. A girl, incredulous, asks how they could be sure he would remove the poison. The protagonist raises his hand and swears in the name of his master that if he didn't keep his word, the celestial principles could curse his master's cultivation, preventing her from making any progress. Mengdi was eating an apple when she suddenly sneezed and wondered if someone was mentioning her name. The group of bystanders says they have a deal and expect him to keep his word. Chu takes his flying boat and says he'll be waiting for good news from them. Later in the forest, several cultivators gather with their flying boats. Suddenly a man appears, asking Mufan why Chu wasn't there with him. This man was Yan Ping, a core disciple at the peak of the 9th layer of the spiritual domain. Mufan asks him to calm down, as he was about to explain. An hour earlier, they had met Chu Shu, but as soon as he saw them, he fled extremely quickly, and they couldn't catch him. Ping asks why they were summoned there, and Mufan responds that when Chu escaped, he dropped that scroll. Ping asks what it was, and Mufan explains that the scroll contained information about the location of the rare monster baby spiritual fruit, which grew in that world, and that the fruit was on top of the mountain. Yan Ping states that a spiritual item is essential for cultivation, confirming that the spiritual fruit was really there, and questions why they didn't take it for themselves, saying he didn't believe in their good intentions, and asking what they were planning. Mufan responds that the environment where the spiritual fruit grew was extremely dangerous, and even if the 5 of them went, it would be like walking to their deaths. They needed Ping's help and others, and if they managed to get the fruit, it would be great if they could share part of the achievement. Ping agrees to the deal and takes the map, saying that, since the map was obtained by Chu, it wouldn't be good if he was ahead of them, so Ping would take some people to collect the spiritual fruit. Meanwhile, Ping thought that Chun Mufan was still a child for expecting them to do the work, and still share a part of it. The protagonist from a distance, sitting in a tree, observed several people arriving at the location where the spiritual fruit was. Ping instructs his group not to spread out too much, as the mist blocked divine consciousness. The girl in the group tells Ping not to worry. Yan Ping's group looks at the monster baby spiritual fruit and comments that it seemed like a fusion of a soul and a demonic fruit. They believed that if they could get that fruit, they could directly break through to the divine domain, and that even if they sold it, it would be worth 10,000 divine spiritual stones. Everyone was eager to get rich. Ping asks everyone to wait a moment because the color of the fruit wasn't right. It seemed like it hadn't ripened yet. He had seen illustrations of the spiritual fruit in ancient scrolls and knew that a ripe fruit would have a blood-red color and emit a sacred aura. If they consumed an unripe fruit, they would be overwhelmed by yin energy and die. The girl asks what they would do since their time in the sacred realm was limited, and they couldn't wait for the fruit to ripen. She suggests that maybe they could take the fruit first and figure out what to do with it later. Suddenly, a red aura begins to circulate around the fruit. The girl covers her mouth and nose, realizing it was an illusory array, and wonders how it had happened. One of the bystanders behind her inhales the aura and begins to scream in pain. Driven mad, he grabs the girl by the neck, screaming that he was going to kill her because she had killed his mother, calling her a damned beast. Ping's group starts attacking each other. Some accuse others of stealing their women, while others argue about the rare treasure, causing a true massacre. Ping realizes something is wrong and asks them to stop, but the blood from the bodies on the ground begins to be absorbed by the monster baby spiritual fruit. 30 minutes later, the protagonist appears after the massacre is over. He hadn't imagined that for the monster baby spiritual fruit to ripen, it needed to absorb the life force of human beings. Chu notices that the fruit still needed more life force to fully mature. He sighs, thinking it wouldn't make a difference to wait a few more days. Since the place was very dangerous, it would be better to wait elsewhere before deciding what to do. 2 days later, the girl from Mufan's group asks if something had happened on the mountain. Why had everything gotten so quiet? Had something happened to Ping and the others? Mufan comments that the monster baby spiritual fruit wasn't something common people could obtain, and fortunately, they hadn't followed him to the top of the mountain. The girl asks how, without obtaining the spiritual fruit, Chu Shu would remove the poison. Chu appears where the group of bystanders is and says they hadn't climbed the mountain. Mufan replies that they had sent some people to collect the spiritual fruit according to his instructions, and even though they didn't manage to get the monster baby spiritual fruit, they did their best and hoped Chu would remove the poison. The protagonist thinks they were cowards who failed to obtain the spiritual fruit, sacrificed their elder brothers and sisters, and still had the audacity to ask for something. Suddenly, Chu senses a demonic aura approaching. The protagonist asks if they had brought those demons there. The group of bystanders responds that they hadn't brought any demons since they had no connection to the demon race. A group of demons mounted on bulls was quickly approaching. One of the demons shouts that it was the human race and orders the others to kill them for their tribe and for their freedom. Chu thinks that 10 days had passed since they entered the secret realm, and this was the 3rd time he had encountered the demon race. Judging by the situation, it seemed like the other races there were hunting them. The protagonist uses the first form, Annihilation, and charges at the demons with his sword. Mufan, astonished, comments that Chu was incredibly fast. The protagonist delivers a powerful blow to the bull's head, easily defeating it. The demon, shocked, thought that the combat strength of that human was too high for them to face alone. Chu defeats everyone effortlessly, and asks why there was a group of demons there. The demon, terrified and trembling, responds that he wouldn't talk. The protagonist then says he would start torturing him slowly until he couldn't bear the pain and started talking, pointing his sword at the demon's neck. The demon, horrified, says that they were originally sealed in the savage demon secret realm by Emperor Taisu and were ordered by a divine domain demon to ambush them there. Chu thinks, a demon from the divine domain. It seems the depths of that secret realm are truly treacherous. The protagonist mercilessly slashes the demon's throat. The other demons, upon seeing the scene, are shocked and ask if Brother Niu had really died like that. Chu tells Mufan that he entrusts the remaining low-level demons to him and that, with his skills, dealing with them shouldn't be a problem. The girl asks the protagonist to remove the poison before leaving. Chu Shu then thanks her for the reminder and throws the antidote, stating that he never goes back on his word. The protagonist boards his flying boat, saying he was leaving and wishing them all good luck. The demons laugh and wonder if the strongest one was really leaving while those left behind were poisoned. The group of bystanders, surrounded, comments that they were at a disadvantage. The demons shout, "Die for our tribe and for our freedom." A pig demon grabs the girl and restrains her, telling her not to be afraid, as he would take good care of her. Chu, flying in his boat, remembers that there were still 2 days left until the monster baby spiritual fruit would ripen, and wonders what he could do during those 2 days. Below his boat, Chu sees Yefan in front of a cave, saying that this was the place. Chu observes Yefan at the entrance of the scorching cave, who mentioned that he had finally found the cave where the treasure of a pseudo-demon emperor was hidden. Now, all that was left was to claim the treasure. The protagonist, Hidden, thinks that the luck of a protagonist was truly incredible, but unfortunately for Yefan, he was there. Chu mentally thanks Yefan and comments that he would go ahead and explore the path. He then speeds past Yefan, who, confused, wonders what was going on. Inside the scorching cave, Chu begins collecting a liquid in a vial, commenting that the versatile stone liquid had a high selling value and that collecting it would guarantee a small fortune. The protagonist finds some high-grade immortal herbs and says he couldn't let them go to waste. Suddenly, a system window appears saying, gained 5 luck points, gained 6 luck points, gained 8 luck points, gained 7 luck points, gained 6 luck points, gained 15 luck points. A minute later, Chu collects all the herbs and comments that his luck had increased rapidly. He wonders if this was due to him taking advantage of the protagonist's opportunity. Shortly after, a new system window appears. The user is correct. You absorbed someone else's luck. If you hadn't taken this opportunity, Yefan would have obtained these treasures and surely had a rising future. The protagonist grabs the spatial pouch and thinks that he had acquired thousands of earthly-class spiritual herbs. hundreds of celestial-class spiritual herbs, 11 immortal-class spiritual herbs, and 3 vials full of versatile stone liquid. If he sold all these items, he would have a lot of money. Chu notices something and, in the distance, sees 2 treasures. He thinks they must be the most valuable items in the cave. As he approaches the treasures, Chu sees a white serpent sleeping and realizes it was at the peak of the divine domain, hidden there to guard the most important treasures. He thinks that if he doesn't activate the trap mechanism that wakes it, everything will be fine. But suddenly, the cave begins to tremble. Chu looks back and sees that Yefan had stepped on the mechanism. Embarrassed, Yefan comments that it was a coincidence for them to meet again and that he had also discovered some treasures there. The protagonist, furious, says that Yefan activated the white serpent's trap. The serpent wakes up and roars in their direction. Chu thinks he needs to grab the treasures quickly and get out of there. He couldn't waste time or he'd be in trouble. He rushes out, leaving Yefan behind with the white serpent. Ye, realizing the situation had gotten really bad, comments on his misfortune. Outside the secret realm, all the masters were cultivating together when suddenly, an old man comes running, saying that something terrible had happened. A large number of tokens from the disciples who had entered the secret realm had broken. Mengdi, alarmed, asks how many had broken. The old man replies that a total of 775 tokens had broken. Mengdi asks about the token of her disciple Chu Xiu, and the old man says that his token had not broken yet. Mengdi comments that a major incident must have occurred inside the savage demon's secret realm, as never before in so many years had so many disciples died. The master wondered why she was so worried about that unfaithful disciple, thinking that perhaps it would be better if he died. Susie tells everyone not to worry, as she will use the illusory eye to take a look at the situation. Susie uses the illusory eye to peer into the secret realm. The humans who saw the illusory eye commented that someone from outside the secret realm was watching them. The demons, upon seeing the illusory eye, wondered if the human race was planning to attack them, as they didn't want to die. Above the main fortress of the demon race, the illusory eye appeared. A demon told the others not to worry, because no one could attack from outside the secret realm, not even a saint king. This demon was the Scarlet Shark Demon, at the peak of the divine domain. He said that the human race could only watch them from the outside, without being able to do anything. If they want to watch us, let's give them a great show by killing many of the human race, he said. The demons became euphoric and shouted for the tribe and for freedom. The Scarlet Shark, holding a mirror in his hand, noticed that the mirror was reacting. He commented that the other half of the mirror had appeared, and that if they managed to retrieve this other half, they would be able to break the seal of the secret realm and escape from there. Humans, upon seeing the demon clan through the illusory eye, spoke of the clan rebelling. A woman questioned how a demon, trapped in the secret demon realm, could manage to advance to the peak of the divine domain when there was a limitation within the realm. Mengdi asked Tai Suzy whether, with the crown of the ancient sacred lord, they should activate the teleportation array within the sacred realm so that their disciples could return. Suzy questioned if Mengdi was concerned about her own disciple. Mengdi, in her thoughts, said she wasn't worried about that unfaithful disciple, but rather about the other disciples. Suzy reassured her, stating that she had already made the necessary preparations and that in 2 days, the teleportation array would be activated, forming a passage connected to the secret realm. Mo Feiyan remarked that if they couldn't hold out for 2 days, it would indeed be disappointing. Mengdi, concerned, wondered where her unfaithful disciple was, though in her thoughts, she believed it would be better if he died at the hands of a demon in the wild demon's secret realm. Meanwhile, a horde of demons chased after Su Ruxu, who was carrying a woman on her back. Chu, seeing the scene, thought that if he allowed someone to die when he could save them, all of his plans would be ruined, as they were being watched by the illusory eye. The protagonist drew his sword, and in his mind, told the 2 women to consider themselves lucky. He positioned himself between them and the horde of demons. Su Ruxu looked back and asked who he was. Chu responded that he was there to help with the demons. Ruxu realized he was Chu Xiu, the boy rumored to have reached the top of the sacred tower, but she wondered what he could do, as he was only at the peak of the spiritual sea domain, while the weakest of the demons' clan chasing them was at the spiritual domain. The protagonist charged toward the demons with his sword enveloped by sword intent. The girl, seeing this, thought that he couldn't possibly defeat the group of demons, and that fighting in such a situation was equivalent to heading towards death. Su Ruxue shouted for Chu not to go, but suddenly, she was astonished by the sight of Chu quickly and effortlessly defeating all the demons. Shocked, she thought that Brother Chu was incredibly powerful, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he was the reincarnation of the demon god. Chu asked his younger sister if she was okay. Su Ruxue thanked Chu, saying she was deeply grateful for him saving both of them. The protagonist handed her a divine-class earth mushroom, telling her to use it to heal her wounds. The girl hesitated, saying she couldn't accept it, as the mushroom was a very precious medicinal herb. Chu insisted, stating that the demon clan's rebellion situation was critical, and if she didn't recover soon, she would be in great danger. If she didn't care about her own life, she should at least think of saving her younger sister. and if she preferred, after leaving the secret realm, she could repay him for it. The girl thanked him and promised she would definitely repay the favor. She mentioned that the outside world had probably already noticed the turmoil in the secret realm and that they would soon activate the teleportation array so everyone could leave. Chu commented that even with the medicinal herb, it would still take time to recover, so it would be best for her to go to the plaza where the teleportation array was and wait for it to be activated. The girl asked if Chu wouldn't come along, but he replied that he wouldn't, as he still had some important matters to attend to, and from then on, they would follow separate paths. Chu, with his hand over the mirror, noticed it was resonating intensely and thought he needed to obtain the baby monster's spiritual fruit and wait for an opportunity to improve his cultivation as quickly as possible. In the plaza, Tai-Su used the illusory eye to display Chu Shu and Su Rukshui. The people outside the secret realm thought Chu Shu was incredible, as he had effortlessly eliminated the entire group of demons. Some people remarked that he didn't even hesitate to give away the divine mushroom, an extremely valuable medicinal herb, so that his younger sister could recover. He was truly someone trustworthy. Some women remarked that Brother Chu and Sister Rukshui made a beautiful couple. Suzy stated that Chu Shu was kind and exceptionally talented, emphasizing how impressive his performance in the secret realm had been. Chi Mengdi, in her thoughts, wondered how her disciple dared to flirt while she was so worried about him. In the wild demon secret realm, on Yinmo Mountain, where the baby monster's spiritual fruit was located, two cultivators discussed how easily they could increase their cultivation to the divine domain if they managed to obtain the fruit. The red-clad cultivator told the other to wait, as he had heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they asked if he was Chu Shu. The protagonist confirmed that they had recognized him and asked what they were doing there. The blue-clad cultivator, using sound transmission, commented that the demonic aura was very dense and it would be dangerous to approach the fruit hastily, suggesting that Chu Shu help them retrieve it. The red-clad cultivator agreed, saying that if Chu got the fruit for them, it would save them a lot of effort, and together they could easily defeat him. The blue-clad cultivator suggested splitting the baby monster's spiritual fruit into 3 parts, but the protagonist refused. The spiky-haired cultivator threatened Chu, saying he should obey and help them, or he would lose his life. Growing impatient, the red-clad cultivator decided to use the 3-star imprisonment formation to trap Chu, claiming that he would never challenge them again. The 2 cultivators attacked Chu, believing that, since he was only in the spiritual sea domain, he couldn't possibly defeat them. During the battle, the red-clad cultivator struck at Chu from behind, but Chu, using the secrets of Xingzi, drew his sword and easily cut him down. The spiky-haired cultivator, enraged, charged at Chu, but Chu attacked with high speed, impaling him with his sword, saying that he should be less hypocritical in his next life. With the 2 cultivators defeated, the baby monster's spiritual fruit began to absorb their life force, rapidly maturing. Chu harvested the fruit and stored it, reflecting on how difficult it had been to obtain and wondering how long it would take for another to grow. Suddenly, a system window appeared, informing him that due to the forced method he used, the fruit's roots had been destroyed, and no more baby monster spiritual fruits would appear in the secret realm. Chu received a reward of 500 cultivation points, preparing him to advance to the 10th layer of the spiritual sea domain. The system also informed him that, upon attempting this advancement, he would have to face a heavenly tribulation. Annoyed, Chu questioned the system, as tribulations usually occur when breaking into higher domains, not for a mere 10th layer. The system, however, confirmed that after analyzing trillions of times, the probability of a heavenly tribulation was extremely high, perhaps because Chu's strength was far above his current domain. The system warned him that if he managed to withstand the tribulation, he would become even stronger. Otherwise, he would be killed. In the ancient tree forest, Chu walked, noticing that the mirror's reactions were intensifying, indicating that the other half of the mirror was nearby. Suddenly he saw a horde of demons running and shouting, "Kill them all!" The shark, with the other part of the mirror, also noticed the reaction becoming stronger and more intense. Chu wondered if the person with the other half of the mirror was close. Hidden behind the trees, he reflected on whether that could be the leader of the demon clan's army. The strong reaction of the mirror indicated that the other half was very close, and Chu began to consider that perhaps the leader of the demon clan in the secret realm was the one who possessed the other half. In doubt, Chu asked the system if he was really going to face a heavenly tribulation, to which the system responded with absolute certainty. Smiling mischievously, Chu remarked that this was truly wonderful. At the teleportation array plaza, Chu arrived on his flying boat. Many cultivators were there, injured and terrified, some wondering how they would return, while others were asking for medicinal herbs or help to save their friends. Seeing the wounded people, Chu thought that the demon clan was determined to kill everyone and that he hadn't imagined they could be as cruel as he was. A system window appeared, reminding Chu that, aside from being pursued by the demon leader, he still had to face the heavenly tribulation, asking if he had thought about how to handle these problems. Chu, confident, replied that he knew what needed to be done and wasn't worried. Near the teleportation array, the demon horde was approaching, and the cultivators screamed that the demon clan was about to attack them in large numbers. The shark leader waved the half of the mirror, releasing an aura that spread across the array's barrier. The humans noticed that the demon's aura was far superior, and many believed they stood no chance against them. They commented that the demons would probably destroy the defensive array, as the mirror in the leader's hands seemed to be an Imperial-class artifact. The demon leader then asked the cultivators if they preferred to live or die, saying that if they wanted to live, they should hand over whoever had the other half of the mirror. At that moment, Chu appeared, holding the other half of the mirror, and asked if that was what they were looking for. In the central plaza of the sacred land, the cultivators watched the scene through the illusory eye. A woman remarked that Chu had attracted the demon clan, putting all the other disciples in danger. Mungdi, worried, thought about how her disciple could do something so risky. The situation had escalated too quickly, and now there were only two options. Either the disciples would throw him out of the defensive array, or he would sacrifice himself and leave on his own. But regardless of the choice, the result would be the same, as Chu did not have enough strength to defeat the demon clan leader. Mengdi looked at Suzy and wondered if it was necessary to use the contingency plan left by the ancient emperor, even though it could cause the secret realm to collapse. Back at the teleportation plaza, one of the cultivators maliciously suggested that, since Chu was the true central disciple, he should sacrifice himself for the younger disciples. Su Ruxue, furious, asked if he really intended to sacrifice Brother Chu. The cultivator argued that Chu would be sacrificing himself for a good cause, but Ruxue questioned the other cultivators, asking if they really thought that sacrificing Chu would make the demons spare them. Instead of joining forces to resist, they were just trying to throw him out of the array, which, according to Ruxue, was ridiculous and would only make the demons despise humans even more. The demon leader began counting down, promising to attack if Chu didn't leave in 5 seconds. Desperate, the cultivators begged Chu to leave and not be cruel, believing that the demons wouldn't harm them if he surrendered. Seeing the situation, Ruxue was speechless. Chu placed a hand on her shoulder, thanking her for standing by his side, but asked her to leave the rest to him. The protagonist then stepped out of the array and walked toward the demons. Suzy, watching from afar, asked if Chu Shu was really going to face the demon clan alone. Mengdi, with clenched fists, wondered if this was truly Chu's choice. The demon leader remarked to Chu that he wasn't bad at all, as he was braver than the others. Chu then opened a box in front of the shark, who saw that it contained the baby monster's spiritual fruit, and asked if it had ripened. The leader, excited, ordered his subordinates to quickly take the spiritual fruit from Chu's hands. The demons surrounded Chu Shu and charged toward him, while the shark leader promised rewards to whoever could seize the fruit. However, Chu bit into the fruit, commented that it tasted good, and asked the system to activate the Tao scripture. A system window appeared, informing him, "It has been detected that the user possesses the primordial sacred body. The Tao scripture will be activated, and 10,000 cultivation points will be consumed." Thus, 10,000 points were consumed, and the advancement process began. Your sacred body has undergone a transformation. You have reached the true peak of the spiritual sea domain and broken through to the 9th layer of the spiritual pillar domain. The heavenly tribulation is about to begin. Please prepare yourself. The window informed him that the heavenly tribulation would begin in 10 seconds. Suddenly, an aura began to form around Chu, above a lotus flower. He shouted for the demons to taste the heavenly tribulation. The tribulation then descended upon them, blasting all the demons away.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and like the video. Thank you.